and we just extended this meeting into that. So we still have a public hearing, so we're going to move right into our public hearing since we've done everything already. So public hearing, public input is sought on preliminary plat application submitted by Jerry Eves located at northwest intersection I-15 and SR-17, tax ID number T-3-0-22-3212. Current zoning is business and manufacturing zone BMP. So the public hearing is now open. We have a couple emails we're going to start out with. We're going to read those. The people emailed in, they're not here, but they would like their voices heard. So we're going to hear from Gary. He's going to read one, then Todd's going to read the other one.
Okay, I haven't read this before, so excuse me if I
Okay.
struggle the first time through here. It's from Ryan Hales at halesengineering.com. I received a request from Solera to identify when the different thresholds would meet.
Let's hold off on a second. Todd, let's have you read yours first. Since
Okay.
Yours is from Solara.
All right, mine is from Doug Toller. Thank you. Okay, mine is from Doug Toller, Tokerville City Council. Solara Communities LLC owns about 200 acres, approximately 2 miles south of Anderson Junction on the west side of I-15 and APN 3151-A-1-HV. We are currently in the process of entitling this property through Washington County for Solara's master plan community. The main access to the Solara community is Mills Lane from Anderson Junction. Currently in process, Tokerville City is the lead applicant for a BLM row as an additional entry point to the Solara community. Solara will provide significant tax revenues to Tokerville City through the residents' patronage of the commercial amenities of the Boulder Ridge development. We are supportive of the land development along I-15, which includes the Boulder Ridge development. The Boulder Ridge preliminary plat contemplates a 26-foot wide easement to connect Ridge Drive to Mills Lane, realigning the access from Anderson Junction. According to Hales Engineering, the 26 feet access easement will not be sufficient to support the trip generations of the Solara community in Boulder Ridge. Hales Engineering recently completed independent traffic impact studies for Solara and Boulder Ridge. The trip generation data from both studies indicate in the 2027 timeframe that access roads from Anderson Junction to Solara would need to be a 66 feet wide easement, which according to current Tokerville City standards would be a 4-lane road. Within 12 to 18 months, the trip generations will exceed the capacity of the proposed easement, creating the need to expand the already insufficient 26-foot wide easement. We're encouraging the City Council to adopt the recommendation of Hales Engineering traffic impact studies to increase the proposed 26-foot wide easement to a 66 feet wide easement as a condition for the approval of the Boulder Ridge final plat. Accordingly, the Dixie MPO is initiating the planning and design process for the improvements of Mills Lane, Wonder Lane frontage road from Anderson Junction to North Leeds interchange, including the intersections. This data supports the MPO process to improve Mills Lane, Wonder Lane to a 66 feet wide easement and incorporate the improvements in phase 1 of the 2023 to 2050 regional transportation plan. Thank you for your consideration, Doug Toller.
Okay, now we're going to hear from the engineering firm, Gary.
Okay, Ryan from Hales Engineering. I received a request from Solera to identify when the different thresholds would be met or exceeded in relation to the development of their project. I will try to do this as succinctly as possible if you are going to enter this information into the record for the meeting tonight. In 2024, without any construction on the Solera project, connecting the existing 26-foot wide gravel road through Boulder Ridge and to the proposed intersection located 1,000 feet from the I-15 southbound frontage road will be sufficient. By 2025, when Solera is under construction and utilizing the connected gravel frontage road, it is anticipated that the construction traffic alone would exceed 250 vehicles per day requirement to pave the 26-foot wide frontage road. By 2027, 2028, with partial development of the Solera project alone, it will exceed the capacity of a 2-lane, 26-foot wide frontage road at 4,000 to 6,000 1,000 ADT based on the curvature of the road and the need for traffic signalization at the new intersection located 1,000 feet from the I-15 southbound ramps. The frontage road would need to be widened to 66 feet ROW, which according to the current Tocqueville city standards would be a 4-lane road. By 2032 to 33, it is anticipated that the Solera project would be fully constructed and would generate 14,000 daily trips, which would utilize much of the capacity of the 66-foot wide ROW roadway. Although the traffic impact study from either development is not a substitute for a transportation master plan, we have layered the traffic from both developments, Sapp Brothers and Settlers Junction RV Park, into the future condition analysts to provide the best information to the City Planning Commission and the City Council for decisions-making process. It has been discussed that either an extension of Boulder Ridge Drive through the BLM property or the widening or existing frontage road to a paved 66-foot ROW 4 lanes be completed to provide access to Solera and other future developments that will occur between SR 17 interchange and the Leeds interchange. Ultimately, with the development of a transportation master plan for Tocqueville City, it will be identified if both are a widened / connected frontage road and an extension of Boulder Ridge Drive will both be needed to address future development north of I-15 between 2 interchanges and maybe even include a cross connection between the north and south of the frontage roads.
He's just finished up.
Bottom line, some good long-term planning will be necessary to help identify your future transportation network.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
We're good. Okay, so we've got a couple people talking about wider roads. All right, anybody else want to discuss anything on this in this public hearing? So we're not allowed to discuss this at this point, right? After we're just hearing from the public. Perfect. Okay, Jerry, anything? Okay. All right, well, barring anybody else wants to, we are going to close this session of our public hearing and move on to our item E1. Discuss some possible action on a preliminary plat application submitted by Jerry Eves located in northwest intersection I-15 SR 17. Tax ID number already stated, and this is current zoning is BMP. Okay, discussions. What questions do you have?
I got a question for
Yes.
staff on the JUC comments for the turnaround and the fire hydrants. Are they going to come into construction plans, or how are they going to address the turnaround?
So basically, when we were in the Joint Utility Committee, John Poster of the fire district said that we will require in the construction drawing plans that they have the correct turnarounds, whether it's a cul-de-sac, and then also you'd want correct spacing for fire hydrants. And that's kind of a standard with almost everyone that we get.
They'll have to do the turnarounds on their property and hold their sidewalk back or something to.
They would need to keep that. They could do if on phase 1, as you can see, and the preliminary plat shows that the roads will be held back for the phase. In that phase, they would just do a all-weather surface turnaround, and then they would stub the utilities for future phases. So that's what that's talking about.
So that'll clean up, the construction plans will clean up all these issues.
Oh, yes, definitely. They will have to be addressed. And as you know, the fire district is one of the utility agencies that is required to sign the construction plans before that can begin. Before the infrastructure begins.
You got other questions?
That's it.
Let's talk about these 2 letters real quick. The roadway, we're talking about Boulder Ridge Drive. So it comes off the freeway. It looks like we got a nice 2-lane each direction, turn lanes, merge lanes, median. We have all that. And then that first intersection, it skinnies down to, what is it drawn at there, Jerry? That from the intersection west and south? Is that a 66-foot now, or is that?
The one coming,
Sorry, yeah. If you could please come to the mic.
Jerry Eves on the Boulder Ridge. So we're talking about the Boulder Ridge Drive
from the
Yes.
freeway up.
Yeah, so up to the intersection, it's nice and wide, big, and these,
So that is exactly like the 4-lane road that we go down right in front of Walmart.
right,
That's what they've got designed there.
big, giant. Right. Okay, from that intersection up to your south boundary. over
So that one
through
goes
Lot 5.
down to a 2-lane
Okay,
to the south boundary.
yep. And what's the width on this right now? Do you remember?
It is,
66 feet.
That's 66.
yes,
As per the traffic report requires that.
Okay. So yeah, so what I'm hearing from, that they wanted 66 feet on this, or they wanted something bigger?
No, our requirement is 66 feet as well as, and the traffic report supported that.
the only reason we're doing bigger to there,
Right. Is state code.
well, that and the amount of traffic turning we have coming on into the Boulder Ridge lots 1, 2, and 5,
Right.
and going the other way.
Yeah.
And so right turns, left turns, we could either do merging, or the turn lanes on the sides. And even though 1,000 feet's a lot, it isn't that far. So
Right.
even though a lot of the lanes won't be utilized until you get a new bridge there, because
Yeah, we don't have that width through underneath.
you only have width for 2 lanes and a double yellow line underneath that.
Here.
And just as a input at this time, where that roadway meets our west property line at the BLM, I'm having the engineering company survey, there's an old road that goes up around that knoll.
Right.
I'm having them survey that roadway
To loop around
to
and
loop
back.
around
to
and tie
build
back
on.
into the frontage road.
Yeah.
And get a legal description to the city staff so that easement can be applied for
Through the BLM.
through the BLM.
Yeah.
They have one option of a road, and the reason I have lots 1, 2, and 5 off of that is they've got some cluster up of a road designed that
They
takes
cut right through your property.
all of lot 2, all of lot 1, and a third of lot 5.
Yeah.
So
It goes away, and it's
that kind of temporary looking road that comes out of the south end of the,
that
That is just-
that mimics the frontage road.
Let me,
come back around following your 4-lane road and come back to tie into the frontage road for temporary, or what is that? Why is that drawn in?
That's not, go ahead.
Darren.
do you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Because basically, we received in your package, you have this letter from Hell's Engineering. It basically states it's a 2-page summary of the traffic study. We're not all traffic engineers. We can't read those as well as everybody. So we asked him to give us a Reader's Digest version of what was going on. And he says the last 2 paragraphs in his letter there, he says the secondary connection scenario would be to improve and widen the proposed 26-foot roadway easement through the Boulder Ridge property to tie into Boulder Ridge Drive at Ridge Drive, Boulder Ridge Drive intersection. This would result in a higher number of turn lanes required due to the high number of turns that would be expected at the intersection. This would also require additional coordination between several property owners to make this coordination. The last thing he says, the feasibility and design of these future connections will need to be evaluated in future detail at a later date. However, as mentioned, the short-term condition will suffice in order to provide access to Mills Road as a frontage road is realigned through the Boulder Ridge project. You guys see
So
that?
it's just
Yeah,
a temporary.
this is a temporary.
Temporary
realignment.
26, it'll be when he records it in the plat, it will be it'll be a permanent easement that would have to be abandoned.
Okay.
But
Okay with that?
Well, the
Well-
easement, what will eventually happen is that will be a secondary access for them, but the primary access will go around the hill. And so if I'm having parking lot go through,
5, 2, and 1.
1, 2, and 5, if that's a
that accessing.
continuous parking lot, then I just have to hook that in and have that, kind of like Red Cliffs Mall,
Yeah.
where they have the driveway around
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
It won't be that's not the primary access. That's kind of
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so what they're asking is this dirt road to be 66 feet through your,
No,
okay, that's around, okay.
no, that's
Yeah,
20,
that's 26.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
the one going around the hill.
I just don't want somebody asking for undue hardship for you. I like the way it's drawn. They can go around, we can get a BLM application. I just don't want somebody expecting they can get something, have the city strong arm, and I'm not into that. So anyway, just,
So the first time you improve lot 2, there's maybe a chance that it's just going to go away and you're going to have to tie in the other one, or you might.
No,
you-
when
you're
we
just gonna-
do that, we are,
you'll,
our intent is to, as we improve lot 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and
Keep
5,
that in, and
that is going to be paved in there and hooked into that
just like the red.
easement. But it
Okay.
will not be the main access.
yeah. Okay.
Why is Anderson 66 feet wide?
Because the traffic study required it to be that.
But it goes right into Ridge Drive, which is only 26.
Anderson's not required to be 66. Well, it is on the other, not on this, not on Jerry's application. It's for the Solara application, in which Solara is not in the city.
Yeah.
When Solara does their development,
This is
they
gonna
will need to widen the Mills Lane to 66 foot wide right away.
And the road that comes around the hill and all, that's gonna be up to
It'll
them.
be up to them to figure out through the property lines. And if they were the first people coming in right now, they would be required to figure out how to go through other properties because they'd still have to do the 1,000-foot requirement, just like Jerry is being required of UDOT.
Okay. And I don't want to talk about Solar tonight. We're talking about the Boulder Ridge. So what do we have questions for Jerry's preliminary plat?
That was all mine. I just kind of saw that and was
Okay.
wondering what it was.
We did increase the interior road size because it is expected to be
Busy.
busy. I mean, we're out there, we're on the west side of the freeway. You can't get any further outside of Tokerville than what we are. So we want to
I
keep
can
it
show
so
you
that,
pieces. I guess the Virgin River down the bottom is firelights.
oh, down there,
That's a little further out.
west. So, yeah, anyways, it's just, we want to make sure that infrastructure is built adequately to handle any
Future. Yep.
future
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm excited for this development, Jerry, just from my opinion. We've been needing something out there for years and years, so this is great.
Well, this one's been 15 years coming. so-
Yes. Okay, any questions?
Anybody else?
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat application submitted by Jerry Hughes, business item E1.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Thank you
carries.
very much.
Thanks, Jerry. All right, item 2, discussion on acquiring a generator for City Hall. After I know you've got some bids and some numbers on this, I'm going to turn this over to
So we're
you.
actually waiting on the third estimate
Okay.
for this, so we didn't upload anything into your SharePoint yet. The first estimate that we have is for 18,000. Second one is for 17,000, and that is just the generator.
That's just generators.
There are a couple of other things that he had to look into besides just the generator. To put it back here at the Public Works Building, we would have to do some work in the parking lot. We've got to run either propane, or we've got to either get propane back there or get a gas line, which would involve taking up part of the parkway and doing that. So he's trying to get it all inclusive, not just the cost of the generator, and to put it before you.
Yeah, because the generator's only good if we can't hook it up.
Right.
I'll be able to bring it up this way.
Yeah, so that's what we're.
Yeah, if we can come up-
We can do either way.
Yeah.
So he's gonna have the people that, he's got 2 of them, the third one is supposed to be coming back, and then they're gonna add to the quote. So hopefully we'll have it for you the next.
Well, and make a note that we got to make sure they have the automated switch.
Transfer switch.
Yeah, the transfer switch. If they're
Without
making
the
sure
transfer switch, it's no good.
yeah, if we got to go out there and
Aaron can go out there
turn
and
it
push the
off,
buttons.
start it up, that's, yeah, pull the
Yeah,
cord.
so the quotes were incomplete the way we
Yeah.
had them, so we've
Okay,
got.
so let's just,
I'll make a
The-
motion to table.
it's just
business.
discussion items.
Yeah,
Can I-
we're
can I ask
gonna
one-
go with what we've got so
Okay.
far.
Yeah, before you,
Just discussion.
Okay.
Before you do that, I got one question. The generators on the water tower or the water tanks are
Diesel.
diesel, but we're looking at either propane or gas here, natural gas here.
Yeah.
And the reason we're not keeping them all uniform.
You don't have stagnant gas sitting in the tank there. There's no gas near the other ones. They're like further away and the gas wasn't ran at the time that them were installed. It's way cheaper and way more feasible.
To put natural.
Well, no, I understand. I was just asking why we're not doing a uniform.
because we
Gas is
don't,
just a better way to do it.
natural gas, and we don't have a way to haul diesel. We have to have somebody come out and drop
Deliver
diesel
it.
off.
Yeah, no,
So-
I understand. The other question is a propane tank versus natural gas. So what propane tank size are we looking at?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, that's what we'll have to bid in.
Okay.
And a lot of those, we could do dual fuel. You could propane tank and if we were just had tons of money, you could do both.
Yeah, but you have to designate one or the other. You can't run both of them.
You can.
You cannot switch it because it takes different injectors.
Actually, they make generators. You just turn a lever and it goes from one to the other.
Yeah.
That's simple.
You sure?
I have one.
So that's new?
It's
Dual fuel?
dual fuel.
Well, yeah, but
It's propane and natural. It doesn't take much at all. You don't have to change orifice. They've got it
Alright.
designed now.
oh,
So,
okay, must be new.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know enough about.
yeah. Anyways, so,
He's getting close.
All right, sounds good.
yeah, but yeah, I'd like to see it, but we'll see where the budget is. It's,
Well, yeah, we'll
Okay.
put it-
It's-
see what it is.
anyways.
We need to table it since it's just.
No, it's just a discussion. We don't table anything.
We just want to give you an update that we're working on.
Okay.
Getting those quotes.
All right, item E3, discuss and possible action for the RFP for legal services. So we are, we
Yeah,
have,
this item is before you. We have interim general counsel.
We do.
with
so be nice.
Galley Walker. And so, yeah, 3 proposals were submitted. Those were Rush and Reed, Jenkins, Bagley, and Sperry, and then Galley Walker and Associates. Jenkins Bagley has, they've been with Tokerville for quite some time. They have been our conflict or counsel, and they've also been our appeals authority for quite some time. They're currently our appeals authority. Matt, Atkins, his office has taken over as our conflict counsel, and then he was actually put in as, his firm was put in as our interim general counsel. The proposals have been uploaded. In the case of Rush and Reed, they have a couple of conflicts with the city that they have, they represent Hurricane Valley Fire, which is a taxing district, a taxing entity. You know, they receive part of our tax. And so that is a conflict that they noted in there that they have. They've represented a couple of other people in our city that would be, which you, I'm sure, had the chance to read, which pose kind of a major conflict. So if the intent is to avoid conflict, counsel, I would say those probably.
So is the conflict large enough that they would be disqualified at this
Yes.
point?
Yes.
So there's no
So
sense
Rush
of,
and Reed, right.
so we're not considering them.
Right, so there were 2 other firms, there's obviously Galley Walker and then Jenkins Bagley. And both of them have representatives, we've talked about this before, we've had the majority of the discussion is that obviously Bruce Jenkins and then Kayla is working with him. That's going to be representing Tokerville in that aspect. Bruce Jenkins has said he's not able to attend our weekly meetings, whether it's planning commission or city council. So a lot of that discussion would have to be taken back to him if Kayla, who's the new attorney, has questions. He would oversee the work, but that's one thing to consider. And then,
So just, if we've got, say, Kayla's so we're paying Kayla, then we got to pay Bruce on top of that, basically.
yes.
So at that point, we'd be paying double attorneys. Okay, All right.
So, yeah, and along that line,
Why would we have to pay them all?
Well, if she's doing the work, then he has to oversee her, then you end up,
So,
but it's not.
are you going to be representing the city every time, or is it going to be, like, are you going to have someone coming to the meetings, or is it going to be you if we select you?
So I would be the primary contact, be the one attending. If I'm unable to attend, then I would have somebody from my office be present as needed. And then, as I've said all along, we kind of have a team approach. So if it's, say, litigation, Tyson Raymond, he's been to a meeting or 2. He would take the lead on litigation. That's what his focus is. If there's assignments I can pass on to other associates, I would pass that on. So it'd be helpful in terms of a lower billing rate. They would get the work done. I'd supervise it, get the final draft and submit that. That would essentially be the team approach our firm would be proposing.
I'm sure Bruce is the same way.
Yeah.
Bruce would be the same. Yeah, the team approach.
Definitely
Yeah.
a team approach.
Yeah. Bruce is great. Matt's great.
So really, I think it probably comes down to price, right? Between the two?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, and- I don't know.
Availability. A big difference in price there.
I think,
I think it comes down to not just price. I think it comes down to,
Qualification.
yeah,
Base.
the qualification and
but, and the other question I had.
you have their proposals before you.
One of the questions I had, and we briefly talked about it at the budget meeting, but, so if I'm correct with Gallion Wilker, we're not being charged for legal secretaries and paralegal work where we are in Bruce
Correct.
Jenkins. So do we know how we can look at apples and oranges to see how that equates out to what the cost
Yeah.
savings would be? Or do you have any idea how that would
Yeah,
break out?
time would tell on that, but I think when it comes to legal, I think on our, I think a lot of things happen in real time at meetings that we need legal advice in real time. And I would think that a lot of things would probably have to be taken back at Bruce Jenkins' office.
What do you mean?
She's a newer attorney. I don't know. that-
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, I understand that. So, and then also I know,
Has represented multiple municipalities. Bruce's firm has, but I don't know that.
yes, because we would be having her at our meetings and planning commission meetings rather than Bruce, is
Right.
what you're saying also.
Correct.
So some will go back there, so it would potentially cost us more when she's at our meeting and then takes things back to
Yes.
him for further
Rather than
clarification.
getting answers in real time.
Okay,
during the
and,
meeting.
okay,
Well, is she not capable of giving the right answer? You're talking about Kayla?
There, so,
We don't know, possibly, yes. She could be great. She could be awesome. I mean,
She's a newer
you know,
attorney. She
she's-
has,
yeah.
she has some experience in municipality, but at the same time, is this your first representation of a city? Or like as a city attorney, or you've always worked with the landowner?
Yeah, so our firm in and of itself, we've represented municipalities, Russ Gallion, when he started back in 1979. So the firm itself has had a long storied history of municipal work. I myself have been involved in municipal work since day one with the firm, so over 15 years. I am serving as Rockville Council. A lot of my work has been on the municipal side from the private landowner developments, entitlements. So I've engaged, know the system, the process, but it's usually being over there. So I'm familiar with what's happening, what's going on.
So you know what developers are trying to sneak by the city. That's what I'm hearing.
Perhaps. Yeah. And I'm familiar with Kayla. She worked at our office for a period of time. Great attorney, but there would be a lot of experience that's not there. So could she get up to speed and do that? Yes. Does the city want that to be paying for the learning experience as part of that? That's your decision.
one of the other questions, I think it kind of came out of the budget hearing too, but the Roush and Reeve offered a $10,000
Flat rate.
flat rate. Is that something to consider, a flat rate, and for the other attorneys? And what might would that save us? Would that cost us more? Or is that based on a certain amount of hours a month? Or how do
The
you,
other firms that have submitted actually don't go on that rate like that.
okay,
I mean, that's their billing structure. In that case though, the amount that they suggested per,
I mean.
we've got to understand what their conflict is.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but let me rephrase that then. If we got one of these other firms to go on a flat rate, does that flat rate include our lawsuit defense? Or is that going to be excluded from a flat rate monthly rate?
I would guess a flat rate only went up to so many hours.
Okay,
And then anything beyond that, they'd give you like the Roush and Reeve, they had a flat rate and then they had so much per hour. I'm sure once you expended whatever I'm sure they'd give you an hour for the month. Once you expended that, they would start adding on
Okay.
hourly.
All right, and then with our previous city attorney, he made the comment that with pending lawsuits and stuff, it may require the city to go to outside special counsel for that.
Right.
With either of these two law firms, Gallion Welker and Jenkins, would that same thing need to be done, or are they able to handle the lawsuits within house if we decide to go?
For the most part, they'd be able to handle any type of litigation, but there's always a risk depending on the type of lawsuit that you might have to get somebody. I mean, if it's water and you have an issue with the water, you might have the console.
And also on that is our legal insurance is if we submit a claim to our insurance company, they'll pick counsel
Okay,
for us.
right,
So
okay,
that
okay.
won't even be for us.
Okay.
So.
All right.
So I need to clarify one of the answers to one of your questions, Todd, with respect to the charges for paralegal fees. Are they included with your proposal? So how does that work if you're using a paralegal? Are you billing us for the paralegal, or is that just included in part of your hourly rate?
So our proposal is that we would use paralegal, legal secretary, but at a zero billing rate. So we'll track the time for our own internal records. It would show that staff member doing the work, but it would be at no additional cost to the city.
So as a naysayer here, but you have something super simple like filing and something really easy, making copies, and you want to keep that paycheck coming in, you have an attorney do that, so you're paralegal, just to say it. Cause I'm a jerk, so I just like to call it out the way it is. But you have so much going on. People worry about that.
You're right, Mayor, but I've got enough going on. I'm not
Right.
worried about taking the time and filing a document. Okay, that's pretty consistent on all my matters. I'll utilize. the
Just had to say it.
So, yeah, my struggle is, it's like an extra $100 an hour. And so what are we getting for that extra $100? So you have experience?
It's technically,
It's less than-
Well,
69.
Yeah.
It's 69. The cost of paralegal-
well, I'm comparing it to the 230 rate,
Oh,
which is because Kayla, she's the one that's going to be here. Okay. So so between her and Matt's committed to being here. Kayla's committed to being here. We've got a vast gap in experience between the two. And Bruce's firm is going to charge us for the paralegals and the copies and all this other stuff. And Matt's is included in here. So I have to look at those two items and whatever else you guys can add to it to justify why we're selecting somebody at a higher rate.
Where's the majority of the time? Like, what is the majority of the time gonna, like, in
It's
that
probably
building, right? Gonna be here in this
Here, yeah.
building? And then I noticed in a couple of other ones, I didn't have time to double check this, but is travel time included to and from? And I didn't look at that through Jenkins either, but.
So my policy, if it's over 15 minutes to get to whatever appointment, if it's under 15 minutes, I don't charge for travel time. And then anything over 15 minutes there. But if I'm already here or close by, case by case, but generally speaking, as I'm traveling from the office to here, that would be included. It's about a 25, 29-minute drive.
Chuck, you had your hand up.
Am I correct in assuming from what Afton said that Roosh and Reeves are not competitive in this because of their conflicts?
Conflicts.
Yeah, I understand. They have a conflict with the
So
city.
then we don't need to discuss anything more about them, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah, exactly. You would need conflict counsel.
Was Afton, Jenkins, was Bruce and his associate invited to come this evening?
They submitted a proposal. They have the agenda.
My question,
We don't reach out to them. They know.
Yeah, they could have
let
shown
me
up.
rephrase that. Was there a reason they didn't show up tonight? Because when we were discussing,
We can't answer for them.
no, I'm not.
We didn't exclude them.
I'm asking if you heard from, let me rephrase that. Did you hear from them and say why they were or were not going to come? Because I remember when we had, if I remember correctly, when we had our RFP, is that the right term? Our RFP for conflict counsel, we had attorneys that showed up to speak and defend themselves.
Yeah, I did not reach out to them.
Okay, so I'm just curious why they're not here. All right. If we're ready for a motion, I'd make a motion.
Yeah.
I make motion that we approve Gallion Welker as our new city attorney.
Very good.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item?
Is he the cheapest?
Well,
Depends on how you look
Well,
at it.
it depends,
on how
yeah.
you look at it.
Depends on how many times Kayla uses.
It depends on how you look on it,
and
yeah.
how many hours? That's just it.
Yeah.
I can't say one's going to be cheaper than the other one. I don't know
And
how.
we couldn't get an answer out of staff. We don't know. So,
Your home base is Laverton, right?
No, he's in St. George.
Could be, but not now.
Well, you'd come to Tocqueville before you moved to Hillerican.
Oh, man. It's hard to
Probably
analyze
true.
these and figure out where you're going to go with it.
Well, that's just it. And I'll be honest with you, they're both great law firms. I mean, they're
I
Bruce
can tell
and-
you, I work with both of them. I work
Right.
with Bruce a lot and on the planning commission side, and I know that they have a really good understanding of where the city's at, what the city's been through. I'm sure by now that Matt does too. But to me, it's really a big monetary change. So we talked a lot about going to in-house counsel and, splitting the cost with other cities. We talked about a number of things. I don't know. It's a big number because the highest we paid was Heath.
Yeah.
Our last attorney. This is a jump of almost $60 an hour, $50 an hour.
Heath was 275.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so it's a $60 jump right now
Yeah.
if we go this way. So, I mean, I don't know.
And qualifications, I think, coming into.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the other side of the fence too, like keeping the council guided in a meeting is way different than getting the codes done and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's, so I mean, there are decisions that come up in the meetings that are very important.
Very,
and
yeah.
We trust the attorneys 100%
Have
with
to.
what they're telling us. And then there's times that never even comes up in a meeting, right? It's just make the decisions and move on.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, that's just it. We with paralegal fees coming basically for free from Matt's firm and then having Kayla and Bruce and then paralegals on the other firm. Wait, I can't tell you which one's going to be cheaper, honestly.
Yeah.
They're going to be probably a wash, honestly. I don't, it's hard to say. It's back to the Kayla's probably a great attorney. Do we help educate her for the next 3 or 4 years? And with Bruce, or do we hire Matt and he knows everything basically now, more experience, and we have answers now. So that's the way I see it. And I think they're both great.
When you put
So-
it that way, I feel more comfortable with the experience right now in the
Yeah.
situation we are.
Right. And I'm not saying Kayla's great. They're great. But we do have a motion on the floor. So, we have a motion for, Gallion Westfall. I'm sorry.
Gallion-
That's way back. Sorry.
That's making you age.
Oh, that's making me really old, really old. I didn't remember. So, anyways, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. We've discussed it. So I'm going to go for the roll call vote. Since this is money, Chuck, we'll start on your side.
Yay.
Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nate?
Okay, we have 4-1. Motion carries. Matt, you're a new legal. Now you're not interim. You can't use that anymore. Now you're full-time.
General counsel.
General counsel. Generally speaking, you're general counsel. All right.
And who's conflict right now?
Conflict counsel.
We don't have.
We don't have one right now because we don't have any conflict.
That's good.
Our attorney right now has no
Didn't
conflict.
someone submitted for both, right?
We do have to do a new RFP?
As interim.
Yeah. Yeah, we are not advertising for conflict of counsel at this time.
Right. The RFP was just for the general city attorney.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll save money not having to deal with two
Oh,
attorneys.
absolutely.
Number one.
Yeah, we're
Number
gonna.
two, I believe that we're saving on a lot of the ordinances that are being
We are.
developed
The
because
way
they're
that-
being done in-house.
Yeah, that's the great yesterday meeting when you guys brought that up where Riker's dropping them into ordinance form and then we're going to send them over for legal
I think
review.
Daisy,
So, oh yeah,
Daisy's
doing
putting
it.
them in
That's
ordinance
right.
form. yeah.
Riker's kind of messing with them, then you're fixing them.
Right.
So perfect.
And go along with that, Daisy is also getting her paralegal certification.
Oh, boy.
Awesome. Holy
Yeah.
cow.
And now that I don't have a conflict in speaking to it, the staff's awesome. Keep utilizing them. They do a fantastic job, and they can streamline a lot of these things where it doesn't have to go to legal. So the skill set you have is to your advantage. And to Joey, your comment over time, you're probably 5, 7, 8 years from a point where you could realistically say the city can hire in-house counsel. At least how I'm looking at it. And I think that's a real good question to be asking. When does that time come where you bring it in-house?
About the time Matt needs an easy job. He can get out of his big firm, come over here and hang out in Toker.
Time I get the color back in my beard.
All right, we're going to move on to item E4, discuss the possible action on ordinance 2024 amending and restating Chapter 7 of Tocqueville City Code to define the duties of the city cemetery clerk and revise the process for burial of indigents.
Who is the clerk?
Indigents. We're not talking about you, Joe. You can afford a plot.
Currently,
Is that how you say that?
currently that's Emily.
Yes, that's how you say
She
that.
has licensing and permitting. Well, currently it's Emily.
So
We're not indigenous people. These are indigents. These are people that are homeless or whatever. They need a place to be buried. You know, do we?
Yeah, so we went back, this was, you were gone, the last council meeting there, so we talked about this, it went back and forth. And then we went back, did some checking in state code, and we had Riker check into it, and he went through and redlined this, put it back in front of you. And he's at Disneyland right now, so he's not here to speak to it. But basically, if you want to go back up to that top part, that's or just down one more, second highlighted section right there. And so, yeah, so restating all of this, that's not the part I was looking for, sorry, keep going down. So what we did on that indigent section, he ended up actually striking it from the code. And just taking it completely out based on state code.
Oh, good.
So,
We don't have to worry about it then.
Well, that
yep.
took care of 2 hours that we discussed it last time.
Yeah, I know.
I heard you beat that horse to death.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to talk about legal fees, just have an attorney sit here for that meeting.
It was horrid.
So just follow the state code now.
So it's just these, oh, we're
I
doing
just
is changing
thought
cemetery
I
clerk,
would-
cemetery clerk.
I'm sorry, Justin.
That's all we're doing with that.
And to also speak on that, Washington County has a procedure for,
Yeah.
Indigents.
There's a place. Okay.
there is a procedure Washington County has
Perfect.
to deal with that.
All right, so we need a motion to amend our ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2024.XX, amending and reinstating Chapter 7 of the Tocqueville City Code to define the duties of the city cemetery clerk and revise the process for burial of, how do you say it?
Indigent.
Indigents.
Okay. Sorry about that the first time. I just didn't even read the word. I just.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? These are not indigenous. That's what you're trying to say. We're not talking about natives.
I didn't even, I just.
This is a
looked and I
different
just-
thing. It's okay. It's okay.
Indigents.
All right, item E5, discuss the possible action on waiving the floodplain development review and permit fee for Shangri-La residents connecting to Tokerville city water system.
So this is something that we wanted to have a discussion about. So up in Anderson Junction, when we connected the culinary water, we went through that process and they still have to pay to connect, they have to pay their deposit, they have to pay the meter setting fee. But we waived up in Anderson Junction, they did not have their impact fees. What this is down in Shangri-La. We've had a problem with that system for a long time. put that in as part of the Tocqueville Parkway project. And so down there, they are all, so now everybody has their own meter, will be connecting, so we've got them, all will have their own meter, their own utility bill, and all of that. So because that land is in the floodplain, there is a floodplain development review and permit. They're normally about $350.
Each?
Yes. And so, anyway, so this is the one, if you remember, Mark Harris come in here a couple of times and there were issues with that. The city did some work on his specifically and made it,
Worse.
I did your words, not mine. But there were some issues with that. And so the question would be, they will still pay to connect. They'll still have to get their standard utility billing and all of that. There are going to be a total of 8 meters. They've already paid their impact fees down there. So it's just the floodplain development review permit. That is done by the city. And so we would just have one permit reviewed.
To do all of them?
Yeah, so it'd be $350 is what we're asking at that.
$350
Their impact fee?
for,
But no,
They've
no, they,
already done, yeah.
Years and years and years and years ago?
Yeah. How much of those retire those things and then went down through there, yeah.
But if
Is there a record of that? Is there a record of that?
we can
Yeah.
go back and.
I don't think so, because that line that we first had was private. They put that in. They didn't.
As far as the building permit, as far as the building permits, we'd go clear back to Lewis Fish and those guys. Because those homes were built back in the 70s, some of them. So yeah, can we go back that far? Probably not. We have to assume that they did get those building permits.
yeah.
Move forward in good faith that those were.
Can't imagine them paying impact fees back then, but
Right. We're,
maybe some of the newer places.
we need to, rather than coming back, because they're existing buildings, they have existing water right now.
We're
and a
just,
2-inch line that's feeding them. They need to connect to that 8-inch water line and go through the meters and have a real.
we've had some
And this
issues
isn't even asking to
So-
waive impact fees.
No.
for
Right.
that. This is asking strictly. to
Just
waive
for the
development
floodplain.
Review permit, which is a city document
Right.
that's, it's a city document reviewed by Jared Bates. And so we're not even asking if they haven't paid them. We're not asking that impact fees are waived for them.
this is just the fee for the floodplain, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, Wayne, we've had
We go out and set the meters.
we've been working on this for years, trying to get this shingle off water line fixed and having the bypass road come in. And we have an 8-inch water line that loops all the way around and ties her back in. This makes it really clean and easy. Now everybody has their own meter and we're not going to have one main meter on the top and then everybody's fighting over who's using water. This is going to clean up a lot of problems for us. A lot of labor, a lot of lost, just real pain. So this is going to, this is basically
I
going
really want to get that 2-inch line terminated.
to terminate it,
Are they
exactly.
gonna pay a connection fee then or something?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
gonna pay the connection fee, they pay the utility deposit, they pay for the meter setting fee for JD to go out there and set the meters. It's
Yeah, it's just this one.
It's just the floodplain development review.
And everybody's going to be happy this time.
Oh, I'm not going to say.
No, I guarantee you,
can't.
I guarantee you not.
All but one.
All right. Any more discussion on this?
Can I make a motion?
Yes, you may, Chuck.
All right. I move that we waive the floodplain development review and permit fee for Shangri-La residents connecting to Tokerville City Water System.
All right, I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? I keep forgetting to ask that. All right, we're going to move on to item E6. Discuss the possible action on supplemental agreement on the amount of $280,000, amending Stanley Consultant Construction Engineering Management Agreement for the Tocqueville Parkway project. So we discussed this item in a closed session where it's a contract, and we've had some direction to the city staff to get some further information. So I believe we're just going to table this item. I need a motion to table.
So move it to table the action on the Stanley Consultant construction fees.
Okay, I have a motion to table.
Second.
I have a couple seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item 7, discuss the possible action on approving a change order to the amount of $113,984 for Landmark Engineering for material testing on the Tocqueville Parkway project. This is also a contract we discussed. In close,
You just have, yeah.
okay, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong.
That's it.
So anyways, so looking to,
I make a motion that we table this so staff can get further documentation that we need.
Which item? E7?
I'm sorry, yes, E7.
Second.
okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item E8, discuss and possible action on ordinance 2024, excess grading ordinance amending and restating Tocqueville City Code 10-18B to modify the grading process. What do we got on the phone?
Jared Bates.
Oh,
Jared, can you hear everybody?
Not really, kind of.
okay. Well, we haven't, can you hear us now?
I can hear you better.
Okay,
Who's on the phone?
Jared Bates, our engineer,
Okay.
he's been working on this ordinance. All right, questions. What do we, I know we talked, you guys talked about this at length last meeting. Where are we at?
I didn't get a chance to watch the grading portion of the last meeting, if what you guys did discuss or how much you discussed.
We didn't discuss much. We
We just tabled it.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
okay.
tabled it.
We tabled because of, wow.
I want to go back to the original. The original one we had, just change to 10% and leave it like that, because I'm not in favor of engineered grading and having pads all over the world uncontrolled. I don't want Tocqueville to have 15 pads out here with no plan for them for years.
Well, they,
If somebody wants to build a pad, they should know what they want. They should have a plan for it and a timeline for it. Not you inherit the problem of a vacant pad. And the only way to get that is through either preliminary plat. Just thought we had that solved. There's a million different additions to it.
So, Attorney Atkins, can you fill us in? So one of the things that, that I thought might be possible. So, going back with what, Mr. Olson said is that we were looking at changing the 125 down to 10%. That was the main change. But while we were going through this change, there was some things about possibly allowing some of the mass grading pads in a limited way. Is there any way to do that in a limited way?
Objection, compound question. Two things moving
You
in
don't have
there.
to give me the job. Yeah.
As to the reason why the grading change came up, that was before my time as conflict counsel or interim counsel. So I think staff can speak to that. The second question is more of, what do you want this to look like? Generally speaking, the city council, this is the time to come together and find something if it does pass, to figure out and address those specific issues. In terms of the meetings that I've participated with, the staff meetings, there were specific concepts, in particular, planning commission meeting that was presented. I think it was the planning commission meeting where we said, what are you wanting? What are you looking for? We took those comments from the planning commission. Not that they were very specific, but there were some directions there, and worked through and prepared this draft, both.
What the directions were to allow for the pads and from the comments from planning commission?
One of the comments was the idea of being able to import dirt and export dirt and have control over that and supervise it.
Can we check with the planning commission?
Yeah.
Since they,
So when this came to planning commission, from my memory, and my memory isn't perfect, and I can't go back and look because files are missing out of SharePoint. So it's my recollection that planning commission was told that either staff or city council wanted us to look at the possibility of allowing pads to be built off-site of where they're removing dirt. And Wayne, you were there, so
It wasn't requested by the council.
I think we did request that.
I honestly don't remember who did.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter.
Right.
who
Well, I can say
requested
one
it.
thing just to that, because I said, I think we maybe should look at the possibility if it's in a limited amount.
Right.
Correct.
Acreage. And so that may have been misconstrued from me, but that was only in a limited capacity.
Right. I think we were talking like 5 acres or something.
Yes.
At planning commission. And again, I'm going off of memory from
Well,
6-8 months or something, whatever it's been. I don't know how long it's been. Long time. So that was the direction that we gave staff. And I was surprised to see this in ordinance form. I really thought, and maybe we didn't give staff full direction, but I think we did. But I thought it was just see, is it possible? If it is, then we can report to city council that it is possible and see where we wanted to go with this ordinance. I think planning commission at the time was really leaning more of just correcting the percentage. And in fact, that's what we were there to do that night. And then this kind of was brought to us. And so I'm almost wondering if we put the cart before the horse and decided to do the ordinance. And again, I'm going off of old memory.
Just one quick clarification as far as ordinance format. State code requires us to put it in ordinance format to present it. So that's what we're having. So everything you'll see that's going to change in ordinance, even if it's a suggestion, everything will be, it'll just be overlaid. How that says draft, everything will be in there. It's state code requires
So
ordinance format.
I know Darren worked really hard with Riker, correct?
Yes.
On addressing this, whatever the direction was, at this point, I don't think it matters, because this is what you did. So, and I know that you put a lot of fail safes in there and things. So would you speak on that?
Yeah, so really, the history of it, I'm not going to go through that, but essentially, as we got to the point where it needed to move forward, it had stalled. So Afton had got with Matt, with myself, Riker, and Jared Bates to get us together so that we could get an ordinance that was had been all the different suggestions that came over the course of time to us. Now, Riker and I had made a few changes. One of them, like Joey was saying, the big one was the percentage. Then we also talked about air quality. We added some things such as that because it's important to be able to have our quality of air and know when a site is getting out of control for dust and different types of things. Then there's also, there's multiple things such as this, and I'm just explaining a couple of them. But, with that, we were at the same time, not only the big part of this, there's some suggestions done on the agricultural grading, what is a 2,000 square foot problem.
2,000 cubic feet or something.
And in planning commission, we went over that in depth, and when they had their last public hearing in this as well. And so I think what we got there, it's just like I say, the 125%. But the big thing is as state legislation, and both Riker and I know, the larger cities right now are being mandated to, if you have preliminary plat or preliminary plat specifically, you have to have full on sets of construction plans. So if in our ordinance, we require preliminary plat approval, or our grading ordinance, we require that, then they have to come in with full on sets of construction plans. And why have the grading ordinance at that point? So then we went and we talked with Matt and said, hey, what is a compromise here? And so this is what we came up with. And Matt, you remember that? We talked about that. We talked about.
Yeah, and Jared's on the phone.
Yeah, Jared's there. He could maybe talk a little bit about that. Can you hear us, Jared?
Yeah, so what was the question about the grading?
So it's about the state mandation that we have to, in a fact of a preliminary plat scenario, if preliminary plat as an application is made, essentially you have to bring in full sets of construction plans. So thus, why are we letting grading go with when they were required to have full sets of construction plans? And so we talked about what is the mechanism we can move out of not having to do that, and that would still give us the security that of that.
Basically, the way it works out now, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe put him on the.
So basically, the way it works out now with the new process is you have to have at least a concept or maybe a 50% utility plan, grading plan. All those sorts of things have to be part of a set of preliminary plat. And so, for example, to do any sort of large site, you'd have to come up with a whole set of plans before anyone even has any entitlements. And so it makes sense on maybe a small commercial project or maybe a subdivision, but if there's, again, a large development or something like we're talking about, that really isn't the solution. So the idea was on the engineered grading plan, you'd have to have a set of plans prepared by an engineer that has a drainage study. There's a bond required, again, all control from the planning and zoning department to make sure that whatever is designed is built correctly and it adheres to an engineering design. It's just not going out there and moving equipment. It has a design and a purpose and a function. So.
Yeah. So with that, in place of the preliminary plat, we were requiring in here is to be full on grading, engineered grading plans. So we substituted that with that, because in an engineering, instead of approved engineered grading plans, I'm going to see their layout. No, I won't see their final use or their proposed use, things such as that you would see in a preliminary plat. But I would see the all of the drainage, all of the roadways, all of the different things that they're going to create on that site.
So with all that, that's going to keep a lot of people from just going out and moving dirt. I mean, that's a lot of work to put into a site that, I want to, talk about, the possible, there's 50 of these giant pads built.
Yeah. So right now, perfect example, you have, I'm not, specifically, but you have an application right now that they just barely got preliminary plat. I'll guarantee you they're going to come in with engineered grading plans and pull a grading permit as quick as they can.
Right. But that's preliminary plat. And we pretty much at that point, we know what we're doing. We give them the grading permit.
But see, in the future, come December 31st this year, we have to, at that point, before they can start moving dirt, we will have to require complete construction plans. Yeah, what that means all of your infrastructure, it's quite a, we're talking from engineered grading plans. I don't know a dollar amount. You're talking quite significant less, but, to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
If it goes back from mass grading or engineered pads, then we will have to require construction plans because preliminary plat will be removed. If this is approved, then this will bypass that mechanism.
It will.
My concern is this doesn't exist in any other city in our county. Every single city that I've done every bit of research gone to has eliminated mass grading, period. Everybody's requiring.
Jared, go ahead.
I would disagree with that. We do mass grading plans all the time in St. George, Washington. Now, there is a set of construction plans that's required. It requires a drainage study. It requires, a full set of construction plans that cost thousands of dollars.
Plans, exactly.
There's no elimination,
Yeah, exactly. It's
So
required construction plans. Yeah.
So, so we have to have the construction plans and then you give them a grading permit. That's how it's working in Washington or?
Which,
Okay.
Washington.
Washington,
And so let me clarify. What that means is the plan is specifically to move dirt. And so it's a plan that includes all those items. It has a stormwater pollution prevention plan, any details that are required. And it goes through the same rigorous process that a set of construction plans for a subdivision, that it would include utilities
but it's not
and
called a grading
road
permit.
improvements.
What are they calling that? It's not a grading permit? What are they calling that?
It's a set of construction plans. There isn't a different name. It's just basically a set of construction plans that goes through the review process. that only includes basic earthwork and storm drain.
So is he saying it's the same thing?
I think that's actually
Yeah.
changed because I just went through that process in St. George and I couldn't do it without full set of everything, water lines, power, site, everything. I just did this less than a year ago. And there's no such thing as grading.
So I'm actually working on a plan right now in St. George along Dixie Drive. We're putting together a plan to place dirt behind one of the hills there, and we've got a set of plans, and I'm getting ready to submit it with the city with Wes. So yeah, I do this all the time.
Maybe I should have talked to you.
So,
Sorry.
so is what he's saying is what he's doing with the construction plan is what our grading
Yeah, so.
plan, is that the same thing? It's just
So
different
Jared,
term?
yeah, what's different between the construction drawings and the dirt moving in St. George versus our grading ordinance here?
In this case, we would make it the same. Meaning the same requirements that I have to include in a set of construction plans to do just to do grading and storm drain. It'd be the exact same requirements. So you'd have to have, a cover sheet. You'd have to have a grading plan with all the earthwork numbers. You'd have grading cross sections that would show existing ground versus proposed ground. A stormwater pollution prevention plan that would show silt fence or any earth berms, and then details or any storm drain that's associated with it, or it would show any storm drain that's required to accommodate the drainage impacts that's caused by the grading.
And in your mind, does
There
this,
isn't a road or there isn't utilities.
in your mind, does this ordinance meet the new requirements for the state in December?
Did you catch that, Jared?
Oh, yeah, that was right. Yeah, for sure, because it's not associated with entitlement. So the grading plan, for example, say there was a large development and there was a grading plan to move some dirt. Because they're moving dirt and making these improvements, it doesn't give any sort of entitlement to the land. So they're not connected. The formula plat is generally generally included or required when you're getting a subdivision or you're doing some sort of a plat or some sort of subdivision of land or some sort of sale of property. In this case, this is just to move material, but to move it in a way that doesn't cause negative impacts to adjacent property owners.
And my question to you is, there's a lot of information and a lot of engineering goes into this, so nobody's going to run out and make a whole bunch of empty pads for no reason, because just the cost is going to be.
Those engineered plans, they're spendy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're spendy. They're not. It's nobody's going to come out and say, I want to build 50 giant pads, not know what I'm going to do, spend a bunch of money,
Yeah,
and then have them empty.
but the end use is not necessarily there.
Right.
So
I'm just trying to figure out the positives and negatives of having this in the city. So.
Usually, what you'll see or you do a mass grading plan is, like a large engineering grading plan is the case to where it's a big development and there's a lot of earthwork associated with the entire development. And usually what happens is the development will pencil out or it'll work because you're able to move large quantities of dirt all around. If you try to do them individually or one piece at a time, they don't pencil out, or it requires a lot of off-site fill or cut. So the idea, it's a way to make it so it's done efficiently and economically. So that way you're moving the dirt one time, not multiple times.
Right. Wayne, you had a question.
Yeah, Jared, exit 2. How long did them pads sit there? 10, 15 years?
Now you're ready to answer.
They had a tumbleweed disaster down there. There's no way that we can control it and get them to come out there and water it or maintain it or nothing.
Well, I guess I would disagree. If you've been on those pads when they were out there, the dust was those weren't dust hazards, because the way that the pads were finished, you'd wet them and crust them and roll them, and they sat out there and they weren't causing dust problems, or they weren't causing any sort of nuisance, as long as they're done correctly.
You gotta remember, I built most of those pads. I know what happened to them. They kept calling me back and calling me back and calling me back, and I didn't want to respond, I'm just worried about that in the city with too many pads here and there, and then have them sit for a couple, 3 years with no intentional plan. They were just a waste area. How we can protect ourselves and have them do the mitigation. that it states in here. That's the hardest part, is getting them to come back and do anything, especially if you only hold 10%.
Now, for example, in this case, those pads were done by SITLA, State Trust Lands, and that's their way of doing business always. But again, the way you can look at it, there's a bond on these. And so say we do one of these big pads and there is a dust problem, you have the bond. And again, it's one of those things to where I've seen them done well a bunch of times. So I guess I don't see what the issue would be as long as they're done correctly. And as long as the contractor does their part.
How long do you hold the bond for?
It's indefinite, isn't it, Darren?
I'm just looking, I cannot remember how long it is.
It's until they build on it. Is that not correct, basically?
I don't know that we specifically put that in there. I know there was another one that we put in, another bond.
I'm
Matt,
not
do you
seeing
have any-
anything in it.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
seeing
looking
we're
at
off of the
that.
bond, but not
While they're looking at the length of the bond,
the life of the bond here.
Councilmember Olson's comment about, I'll call it maintenance. In the discussions as we were meeting as a group, there's two sections that were added that were not, or in the draft, there's two sections, section 11 and 12. So one is an annual review that
5 years.
they can go up essentially to 5 years, where the city still has the review process. What's going on? Is it being done per plan? Is the cover being put into place, maintenance, things like that? And then section 12, there was no enforcement language. So if there is a problem, how does the city address it? Now there's language that essentially takes it from no enforcement past the denture stage to some actual teeth in the ordinance to address it.
I understand I understand both of Joey and Wayne's concerns with, we get,
Perfect time.
Oh, there you go.
I understand.
late, sorry.
I understand both their concerns with, we just have pads sitting empty for a long time. And I did see that you guys put the annual review 5 years. Is there a reason we picked 5 years? And would it be appropriate to maybe shorten it to 3 years? That would answer maybe some of the concerns.
It needs to go longer.
So why would you want it to go longer?
So there's a stark difference in exit 2 to what we're doing because we're surrounded by sand in that area. So let's say, and this is just, theoretical, in 8 years, that pad's still sitting there.
Right.
And Firelight sold it to somebody else and they don't really care or whatever, they wash their hands. Now you got a pad sitting out there and it's getting sand covered on it. What's that sand going to do? It's just going to keep blowing.
No, I understand that. So wouldn't it be
so-
smarter to
Well, the 5 years talks about,
Yeah.
we can inspect up to 5 years.
Right.
Joey's saying let's inspect up
But
to 8 or 10 years.
after 5 years,
I'm sorry. Then
there's nothing we can do except for
all right.
live with it.
I'm misreading this
Yeah.
then. The way I read this, and correct me, then I must be wrong. The way I read this was they had 5 years to start doing something with that pad, or they need to restore it back to the way it was before. Is that, am I reading that
I'm
wrong,
just-
Matt, or
yeah.
how did I read that?
So they pull the application and they have essentially 1 year to get that completed. If it's not completed in terms of getting the grade done to final grade per the plans, what the design was, then in year 2, they can ask for an extension. If it's still not done, so go to year 3. So they go up to 5 years.
To
build the plan.
Just to build the pad.
build the
Get it
just to build the plan.
per plan.
Only,
Right.
okay, all right.
But what Councilmember Campbell's talking about is this ongoing supervision. If it's a nuisance or it's
Yep, okay.
over time, it deteriorates and it's no longer per plan. How do you manage that?
Okay, so I misunderstood.
No, you're good. That's a great question.
Good questions.
Well, what happens after?
So that is found on 1018B11,
They get repeated extensions.
annual review.
And extend past 5.
Okay.
If you guys want to pull that up.
Basically 5 years to build that pad.
To build
5
the
years, then you had enforcement
And
issues.
so they work on it
along
for
the
6
bond.
months out here in this sand, Jared, and it'll blow away in 6 months. So they got to do it all over, and that sand's going to go blow right into Firelight's houses, and it's going to be a big hassle out there.
So here's what they do
That
is
sand
it is
just moves. You can't soil crust it. You can't do anything with it. It's crazy.
Grab it and hold it right to
Take
you.
your name there.
Sorry, this is Jared Bates. So just to answer your question.
Hold on just one
Okay,
second.
yeah.
Before he continues, Jared Bates is a licensed stamping engineer in the state of Utah. He's also in the city's engineering pool from Rosenberg Associates. He's also our certified floodplain manager, and he also wrote our natural hazard mitigation plan for 5 counties. So just the public's here, just so you know.
He's a real
who
good
he
guy.
is. Who's this guy? that
Like
just-
Darrell Law.
It's like,
But to answer your question, Wayne, I guess this goes back to, again, these are very expensive to design and expensive to build. So if they're out there and they've got a couple of scrapers out there and they've got a bunch of iron out there working, if they stop in 6 months, they're bankrupt or something. So I don't think anyone's going to start and then not finish the pad who's seriously doing these sorts of things. We're talking about these big pads, right?
Well, they might have a bunch of excess dirt off one phase and stick it there and then not deal with that for a long time. So
it has to be
it's
placed.
cost to get rid of that dirt right there.
Go ahead.
obviously.
What was that?
Well, no, that's a good comment because there is stockpiling. So in the ordinance, it says stockpiling is not allowed, just exclusive under this ordinance. So you can't just put the dirt there. It has to be placed.
It has to be placed and compacted and
And
engineered.
and match the design. So there's no in between. If there's if there's a construction plan, say it's for the road out there, you might run into some stockpiling for the road, but that's different. In the case where if it's just strictly earth moving, there is no stockpiling. You have to get out there. You have to put the dirt, place it, compact it, wet it, hit it, and it's done. So there's no middle ground on this one. And we talked about that specifically because that was a concern that these guys had because they don't want a stockpile sitting out there and blowing.
But they could stop in the middle of the process and then hang out for 6 months and then go
Well,
get
then we probably,
renewed.
the bond would come in place, is what we think.
Yeah, but they can still stop because they got 5 years. They can keep coming here and renewing that. You keep working on that pad for 5 years. The way that.
If they stop, they've got to bring it to a final state. Or to a state where it's not blowing, not causing dust mitigation.
I read that different because they start, they got a year to do it. And if they can't complete it in a year, then they can go for another year.
They
can't
can.
complete it, they can do that 5 times for 5 years. So they can continually working off and on there, just keep coming back in for another permit.
Now, the one thing is there is the review and the
Extension.
approval. So if we decide that, hey, this group's out here just messing around and the year has happened, then Darren can say no.
Yeah,
So the city has all the power to reject them at year 1 if they're not complying.
Collect on their bond and take it back as, reclamation as much as we can, as well as put down any type of soil binders, those types of things like you're talking about.
And I think we would agree, Darren, if that is the case, you would do that. If what Wayne's saying was
Oh,
the
yeah.
case, that would happen. So just to be
So,
clear.
yeah, or if they came into a point where, let's say they come in, any type of developer, and they come in and they say, hey, Darren, we know we're going to halt production of that pad for now. I'm going to say, okay, let's bring it to a solid a state where it's going to be sustainable without, it's going to have BMPs in place. It's going to have different types of things such as that. It's going to have soil binders. It's going to do those things. And yeah, and if they don't do that, then we collect the bond and we do it. We hire somebody to do it.
Was 10% enough?
I don't know. Can we go more than that?
I'd have to verify that, but the discussion was 10%. That's what the practice has been, but I can verify that if
Yeah,
that can be adjusted.
So
It's an incentive to get it done.
it is, but
Higher percent.
I want to, and we're going to have developers come in. This is just a way for them, I'm honest with you, to save a ton of money. If they have this phase they're working on, they know they're going to do this phase next, and they can take dirt from here and fill it in, or take dirt from here and put it in this phase.
That's perfect. If they
That's
can do
is
that.
exactly what I think that's the major goal here. Not just go out and make pads, but say the phase 1 and 2 have 1 million extra yards of dirt, and they know 3 and 4 are short. They can come in with a preliminary or a grading permit and go over and say, hey, we're going to put houses here, and we're going to compact the dirt that we're taking off phase 1 and 2 and put it in 3 and 4, and then that way they're not having to stockpile or haul it off site and then have to import it back in. I'm just looking at the cost and the ease for the developers. This makes sense. I just don't see them going out and do a whole bunch of mass grading just to do it for shits and giggles, but to actually do it for a reason. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say it like that, but
It's happened to us. It happened to us in Anderson Junction.
It's a
word in the dictionary. Anderson Junction, they did exactly what we're talking about, and we still got that problem. They just went,
Which-
raped the whole land.
On Anderson, where at? On
It's a
the,
junction. That whole
across the
thing-
freeway where they had that,
No, on this side of the freeway. Scraped it all off, pushed all the rocks up and walked away. And we didn't even
Whereabouts
stop
on
at the
Anderson?
time. Who remembers that?
And
Water
you're talking about,
Conservancy,
you're talking about the, when they, that was Sunrock or I can't remember.
No, it's on this side of the
it's on
freeway.
this side. We're not talking about the horse.
There's about 40 acres there and they just
Talking
went through
about the
there.
Hunsaker property years and years ago.
It's probably, it's just before you turn off to go to Gilbert's place. It's on
Yeah, this is the
that
same
side.
one, yeah.
They just went and did that. It
Was a-
was a nightmare. We had people in here continually complaining about that.
I think
Nothing we could do about it.
I think that's I think that one didn't have a
For the
grading permit.
firelight thing,
Well, no, it didn't.
it's a win-win to do what you're saying,
Right,
as long as it doesn't get out of hand, because they are gonna move dirt from here to there, from there to here.
right, right.
But if they have something planned where we know that it's actually gonna get built on in a year or something
Yeah.
happening, rather than.
I believe that
This
plan,
fact, we're gonna put $1 million over here and we're gonna stockpile, see how the economy does here. and then
That's
maybe
where they
we'll use
can't,
it.
that's what's nice thing about this is they can't stockpile. They have to actually put it in as an engineered, compacted and done.
And to a grade and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
One point I wanted to make, what you're saying, Justin, what happens is, say they do a big grading plan and it covers a large area, what's going to happen is each one of those sites are going to be graded together. Often what happens is if the sites are graded individually, the developer's going to make me say, hey, saving those money. So you're going to might have a pad be really high, a pad really low next to it. So they're not going to be consistent. They're not going to be aesthetically pleasing, because if each pad is kind of done individually based on its own merit, instead of taking, a bunch of them at once, and then all of them flow together, all of them are the most efficient, planned, aesthetically as well as from a dirt standpoint. So that's the thing too.
and my total thing here is not for any one developer, because I get to deal with Sapp Brothers. I get to deal with the other side of the freeway. I get to deal with subdivisions, individual small ones. I want it to work for everybody, because I'm not looking at it just for big grading pads, especially, specifically. I want it to be other things as well.
Yeah.
And if
10
there's
or 15
somebody,
acre pieces.
yeah, if there's
Yeah.
if there's a 15 acre or 40 acre piece that comes in and they start grading and they don't follow this, then we can have something to do, because maybe they're needing to bring dirt from another site out of Tokerville. Maybe they're contracting with Interstate Rock to bring material over, or they've got excess and they're taking it out of town. It doesn't have to have this to that.
I think we all understand that the developer needs to move dirt. I
Right.
think that everybody's concern is the long-term effect. So the citizens of the city get to drive by that every single day and see this pad, right? And if there was an intent to build in 10 years or 5 years, I think that would wash everybody's concerns away, right? So, but we all see these pads sitting out there. They've been out there for 20, 10, whatever years, who knows, right? So I think that's really the concern. Everybody knows why would we impose another cost on a developer to move a bunch of dirt from Ivans in here? I mean, that's stupid to even say that. But the limiting in time and the ability and the intent to build on it is the big question. And then the long-term maintenance. If it is more than 10 years, the long-term maintenance with the amount of sand that we have is different than other cities. So that's really my big concern always is I want to find a way to help people and use their own material, because I mean, they're landowners too, right? They need the ability to use their land how they want. I don't want everybody to be driving down that bypass or wherever it is and stare at just nothing but blank pads for miles. Not to say just there, anybody could come in here and submit this plan and do this just for development purposes only, for a monetary gain. And that property could sit there for years with no intention. They could just come in here, submit this plan and plan to leave it, and the economy took a crap and nothing's going to happen. And it's the citizens that get a look at that. It's not the developer. The developer might look at it for 8-hour shift, 5-hour, whatever, but it's the citizens in this city that are looking at these pads. And that's what I'm concerned about. Right?
Would a limit on the number of pads?
That was like my main question. And that's why I said, I would like to go down this road if we can figure out a way legally to go down the road with a term, with, so many acres here, so many acres there, with the intent to build on it in a time.
We all understand that the economy is what drives building on that. But if something doesn't get built on in that certain amount of time, then the pads cease construction. That's what my intention was to start with this.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, one thing I was thinking about, if the concern is aesthetics, I mean, you could make it to where, say that you've got these pads, you could do a berm along the edge of the road, and you could have some sort of landscaping that's required along the edge. So you can make it to where, gosh, this big flat pad, you come up and have a 2-3 foot berm that's got some
Vegetation.
or some
Desert
rock
landscape.
mulch or something that's appropriate for the site. That if it's a concern about, realistically aesthetics, that can be solved. And again, it's cost, but I think if someone really wants to do one of these pads, they want it to sit for 10 years, they want it to look nice too. I mean, I think we're kind of getting off track a little bit with this thing, but that's what my thought would be. Is I've seen it done that way too.
I don't know the answer to this question. I'll just throw it out. Can you require the developer, if they're going to do these engineered pads, could you require them that in, pick a number, 5 years, they have to have a preliminary plat or a preliminary site plan? And would that help us at all?
That was my main question.
I don't know.
Very start.
Would that help us at all? I don't know. Darren, can you answer that?
I'm sorry.
In terms
So
of,
my question is, or Matt, my question is, could you require a developer, if they're going to do these engineered pads, could you require a developer that they would have to submit a preliminary plat or preliminary site plan in 5 years? And what they're going to do with those engineered grading?
I think that would be a legal.
no, there wouldn't be able to put that kind of time requirement to come in and submit a preliminary site plan or what they're going to do to apply for that. But in the concerns that are expressed here, in the application that's submitted for the engineering grading, and it could be for the minor as well, but really the more complex one is the engineered grading application. If there was a requirement to state the intended use beyond the grade and the plan, but okay, this is going to be our intention to use it for subdivisions, and our rollout time to start construction on that or come in and start actual development is a fixed period of time. Would that start addressing some of the questions about what's really going to happen with this? Even though it's just simply in the application, they're stating what their intent is at the time of the application. Does that help address what's being stated tonight?
I have one comment too. In addition to that, I would say most of these, if you're talking about, if it's a big, say it's a big engineered pad, if we're talking about this, there's likely going to be a development agreement. And so I think in the development agreement could be the vehicle to really put the screws to whoever's doing the development as far as requirements that he wants specifically as far as timing and purpose. I think that'd be the appropriate vehicle to have the
For future development agreements, yeah. That's come and gone on one of our.
Develop agreement on a pad.
Well, you could say in the development agreement, you can only have so many pads or so many acres. You could do that in a development agreement, but I don't think you could do it anywhere else. So.
Right. But again, I think we're
Could require it in this code, actually. A new development agreement.
if the development is over X number of acres that it's intended, it requires a separate development agreement to specifically address the pad.
But I like Matt's idea. If they come in and say, okay, this is for future commercial use, or this is for home subdivision, or this is for, then we know what the kind of idea is. Scott?
A landowner could say what their intent is for sure. But
It's not really the intent, it's the intent to build. We intend to do this. Everybody intends to do it, but the intent to build on the property and not leave it sitting there.
The what in the when?
They're not contractually
Exactly.
bound on an application.
Exactly.
Well, now you could look at it, you could say, hey, they do a preliminary plat, but they could, because back in other times we're saying, I think in Hurricane, they were pretty strict saying, hey, we can't do any grading without having a plat or a plan. We make up a plan and it goes away.
Right. And they come in and change the plan.
They come in and change the plans. So there really isn't a point to having a preliminary plan unless there's a specific design for the project.
An intent for the project.
Right, because if it really isn't there, I can drop a million plans, and then if they're not followed, it doesn't really matter. So it's not really helping us, or you're hurting us either way. It's just.
If during a given year, something goes upside down, then you don't give them an extension. Is that really the way it's going? So you got 1 year of misery, let's say, maximum, and then you put a stop to it.
and then have to mitigate. Yeah.
And
have the bond to collect.
Yes.
So you could require, okay, after so many, a period of time, whatever that period of time is, and then they have to use, stated engineering practices, reseed it, make them reseed it, which kind of covers what Joey's talking about. We need to remember where we're talking right now is the racetrack, really. 5M came in 35, 40 years ago and cleared every bit of that. And then Winding River came in and reseeded it. And you drive by it now and, well, before the construction, and you really wouldn't have known that. So it is possible to mitigate if someone really screws up. You have the bond, which you could then reseed it. But if you require, okay, after a certain period of time, if you're not building, you reseed it, that's going to give a lot of incentive to the builder because that's
money.
doing a lot of what they just did.
Yeah.
Did you have something? No.
One of the other concerns, I mean, wind blows a lot. We've had tumbleweed Armageddon this last week, right? But water, we've had some pretty significant water events. But what's being required is water retention, water control, and storm drain. So the design would be evaluating, okay, if we have large water events, does the treatment, what's the engineering term you use? Well, no, like if it's riprap where you put on a sealant.
Erosion control.
Erosion control.
Yeah, the erosion controls. That's part of the issue here is it's being built into the plan. Because if you build it year one and it sits there for 4 years, odds are we're going to have some kind of heavy rain event, but it's designed to control those types of things. So that's something in the application process that it's elevating the benchmark in terms of what the city can require and is imposed on that developer, whoever's going to start moving dirt.
Who maintains the retention? The property owner?
Yes.
If it's on site, yes. If it leaves the site and enters into the city storm drain system, then it becomes Tocqueville City's.
Well, sort of to clarify, if it's on site and doesn't leave the site, it's property. Or once it leaves the site, it is the city.
Yeah.
But the intent from state laws to not leave the property or not to shed on your neighbor, right? Unless you go into a proper drainage.
Right. Or for example, if you have a drainage plan, you can't drain differently than what it was prior to construction, and it can't have more water to leave than what it was prior to construction.
Yeah.
Historic flows.
Historic flow. So it's pretty strict.
Any questions? Scott, you had one more comment. Would you?
I did. The city of St. George has a stormwater maintenance program that each landowner has to maintain their own drainage facility. So if we built a detention basin and inlets and stuff, we would have to inspect those once a year, make sure that those are functioning. I think that would be a simple system together. And Tocqueville will want that eventually.
Darren, you hear that?
Hurricane needs to do that.
Okay, well, we don't care about Hurricane right now. We talk about Tocqueville.
Yeah.
So, okay. Questions, comments? Jared's here. Gary.
I want to look at another section of this.
Absolutely.
Related to the exemption section, section B. And
Where are you at, Gary?
To the top, all the way up towards.
Yeah, 1018B 1 through 3, through 4, sorry.
Okay, so under exemptions, it lists exemptions, but, and I'm kind of digging into the residential side of this, but it says that any applicability of any of the below exemptions must be determined by the zoning administrator. So I just cannot see every single residential person coming in and saying, I need the zoning administrator to come out and look and decide if I can do what I want to do. I don't think that, number one, I think Darren, if you're the zoning administrator in this case, as an example, he's going to be inundated with people that are trying to follow code and having to come in instead of using their own common sense, realizing that, listen, I'm just doing some landscaping. Okay. So, And then the definition of minor grading, anytime there's minor grading, that also has to be approved by the zoning administration. In addition to that, if you're doing minor grading under definition 218B2, it requires a minor grading plan and a drainage plan consisting of the following. So here we've got a resident that's doing minor grading, and he needs to submit a minor grading plan, and he needs to get the zoning administrator to decide if he's exempt or not.
I think it's a great question. So Darren and I have, we've run into this a bunch where he's had to call me and say, hey, help me fix this.
So-
At least 5 in the last year to where.
So I'll, there's just one example is that we had some people that their landscapers pulled up. They were just doing some minor landscaping. They pulled off a track hoe and a skid steer and a bunch of stuff, and that's not minor grading. I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
When they came to do this, and they, in their mind, they didn't need a grading permit. They weren't going to get a grading permit.
Well-
So the thing is their neighbor calls up, and I didn't know about it. Their neighbor calls me up and says, hey, I had to go through this. Do these people have to go through that? And they had not notified me. They had not notified the city that they were going to do it. They have close to 12-foot retaining walls on their project, on their retaining fill. That did not, in that person's
But
mind.
Darren, that's an
need that.
enforcement issue.
Well,
the way I see it.
we've had five of those issues. I get you. It is.
So I don't want to penalize every citizen in the town just because we have one citizen that has an enforcement issue. So.
Five in the last year.
750 homes.
So yeah, I get you. But what I'm just saying is if you just require them to come and say, hey, we're going to put a garden spot in, we're not bringing in 58 loads of dirt, which is the 1,000 cubic yards. That's how much 58 dump truck loads would be. Then you're fine. Go for it. We don't need a.
But it says, the
all of that.
code says that you need to approve it. And you've got in there under residential, you defined it as minor grading, residential landscaping, minor grading. And you have a definition of minor grading that requires construction plans and drawings.
So when this came to the planning commission, we had a long discussion about that. And it was agreed that that would have been changed to a residential would not need a grading permit as long as they retain the water on their own property, just as the same as with agriculture. That they needed to retain. No, I'm sorry. We had an agreement with agriculture that they had to retain the water on their property, and I kept trying to go back to residents, but with my eyes I couldn't read, and I was getting really frustrated. And I'm just like, okay, fine. Let's see what the city council wants first, and then we could go back and hash that out. I agree with you, Gary. I don't think we should be requiring the residents to go and get permission from the city to put a garden in. And now granted it states, we'll give you 2,000 square feet. Well, I'm going to change my backyard. I'm going to raise it 2 feet, and it's going to be more than 2,000 square feet. So now I've got to go to Darren and say, Darren, can I do this? I think that's excessive with the city. So I would like to, you guys give us some direction on how you want to do the transfer of dirt and everything, and then send it back to planning commission. Let us fix some of this residential minor grading stuff.
It says that does not modify the elevation of existing ground. By how much? When we talk about modifying elevation, is that 1 inch or is it 3 foot? We don't know. It's not defined anywhere.
Under the exemptions, so this is work that doesn't require a grading permit. So basically, if you're raising the ground 6 inches, then you're likely going to have a permit. But then usually if you're moving the dirt that much, then you're probably renting equipment or you've got a contractor. So I think once you're in that stage, it makes sense to have a permit, or at least ask Darren about it.
Well, then I would consider that to be minor grading. But I do not consider landscaping on most small projects to be minor grading. Minor
that's
grading
exactly what we're
is
saying.
defined there.
We have
And-
large lots here in Tokerville.
We do.
It doesn't take much to hit 2,000.
2,000 square feet is.
Or to change the elevation.
The
of
elevation.
You know, I mean, so well, I've already stated.
Well, I think that was the argument that, you know, we have, again, as an engineer and as, you know, as a city official is, but changes that are in that scope, they cause flooding on neighbors' property. They cause retaining walls that can collapse and cause damage to city property. I mean, it really is that serious. It happens. I mean, we had like 5 in this last year, and it's just like, you know, if you're gonna spend thousands of dollars to hire some equipment to move some dirt, go talk to Darren. I mean, I don't think it's that difficult and that big of a burden if you're going to spend thousands of dollars to move dirt. If you're talking about working in your garden like these exemptions, I don't think it's a problem. And I think that was the intent of this.
The problem I have is, you know, and I believe Darren is very capable of deciding what's minor grading and what's residential landscaping. I'm not worried about that.
Right.
What I'm concerned about is the public having to come in, every single person having to come in and let Darren decide, so to speak, whether they qualify for an exemption or not. That's going to inundate them if everyone in this town is going to be compliant with this ordinance. That's what I have a problem with.
Yep.
And the second thing is if it's defined as minor grading, then the resident has to submit plans and drainage plans and so on. And that's where I have my problem. I don't know if the plan commission can fix the language on that, but I'd like to throw it at them and have them fix this. And that's just my
I
opinion.
think if a resident was making big retaining walls and doing a lot of stuff, I can see that.
Right.
If somebody
We have-
coming in and building garden boxes and ripping some grass out, replace it with rocks, you know, I just don't, even if, so they take out 10,000 square feet of grass and they put gravel in, is that a grading permit?
We already have ordinances that cover retaining walls and things, and everyone's going to be subjected to that already.
Exactly.
So I think it's overly burdensome for residents, single-family homes.
One thing I would like to say is we actually talked about a lot of that with that residential one. A lot of Tokerville exists in the floodplain or on hillsides. And those are things in the floodplain, that's FEMA. So we actually feel like that, if you scroll down days to that residential, that minor grading, I think it's optimistic to say, oh, everyone in Tokerville that moves dirt is just going to be swarming the city office to ask Darren for a permit. We actually go way the opposite way, where people just go out and grade and do it, you know what I mean? Like 5 times in the last year of grading. So the minor grading is exempt as long as they're not changing the natural grade. I mean, that's what it says. We're not asking, there's nothing in there that asks for people who are doing, it says residential uses are exempt from that. So I think too is spot on. If you're going to be doing minor grading, if you're going to have equipment and you're going to have it down in Shangri-La, we need to know. We have to fill out that floodplain development permit. That's how we got in trouble down on Choya. We had homes built down in the floodplain without floodplain development permits. That cost the city, it cost taxpayers money. I don't think it's too big of an ask to say, hey, if you're residential, your residential use is exempt anyway. So if you're doing a garden, you're not going to be doing that. But if you are going to modify the grade and be flooding out your neighbors, it would make sense that you ask the city, hey, is this minor grading or not? I think if you're unloading a Traco, your neighbors should be able to trust that the city's going to check and see if that's going to ruin your property. I don't think that's too out of line.
And I agree with
If
all
I
these
lived here and I had
examples.
somebody up here and I saw a Traco coming in, I would want to know. that
I
the
agree
city-
with all these examples, except for the people that are going to be law-abiding citizens and feel like this ordinance is just too much for a private home.
Yeah, and they usually just give a phone call and say, hey, but what do you think?
But
This is
yeah,
what I'm planning to do.
usually,
It's not-
and I'm just asking to just take that out. Exemptions, list the exemptions there and don't have to have if it's minor grading, it says just add, be determined by the zoning administrator in that particular thing on item B3, for
It
instance.
says that up above where it says,
But that covers residential.
Question for you in terms of the language. So as I look at B, as you introduced, where it says exemptions, it just said exemptions and jumped into the three categories. One of the reasons of putting that language in there is to help everybody know who's making this decision. The current version says we've got these exemptions, but we don't know who's making what determination. So I look at it as we now know who that is. I fully understand the concern about being inundated, and maybe we can put who's making that determination in another spot, so it doesn't come across as anytime we're taking a shovel and moving dirt, we got to call the city. But from my standpoint, we were trying to figure out the who, so people would know who do they reach out to, or within the city administration, the city knows who's making that decision.
And one thing, Gary, I feel the same as you do. I really do. And the hard thing is the like you were saying, the enforcement, catching them afterwards is so hard, and it's so much more expensive for them.
But I'm just going to say, I didn't know anything about the ordinance. How many people know what the ordinance is? They're going to do it anyway.
You know what the speed limit was either, officer.
So at least
I didn't look.
Yeah.
Still don't know what it is. 1,000 yards is a lot of yards to move.
Right.
1,000 yards, just so 1,000 yards is 58 dump trucks, like 10-wheeler dump trucks.
Sure.
That's a lot of dirt without, that's getting an exemption. You could get an exemption. You could change your
Even with that much dirt?
grade of your, elevation of your yard very easily with.
Okay, it's a wording issue, I guess. is
I think-
what I'm dealing with. It's a wording issue.
I think.
So can we come up with a way to reword this so that way we can make a vote tonight on this thing? So I'm not stalling.
How much should,
Yeah, or do you?
It's 45 minutes.
So are we gonna send this back to planning commission? Is that what? Are we giving
Well,
planning
Stacy's
commission a
willing
list
to
of?
take it back,
Yeah.
but the question is timing an issue on this?
Then we need to talk about all the other aspects. If we're gonna send it back to planning commission, we need to get the rest of the items with clear guidance back to planning commission. Right? So this is.
If you're not
one of them.
if you're not making major changes, you can make motions with conditions. While the attorney's here and we're talking about legal costs, he's gonna have to attend planning commission.
I would have paid him $375 for this already.
Right.
So
An hour on this dang thing.
My question on this is, and it was the same question I started with, is can there be verbiage anywhere in here that only allows for a developer / landowner and or landowner combination can only have X number of acreage in engineered pads at a time? Is that a legal avenue?
That's a development.
Well, in short, there could be, in how you figure out what that formula would be. It's got to apply to a 5-acre parcel, or it's got to apply to 500 acre. Yes, the ordinance could customize that. Realistically, it would be better to address those types of issues, say like a development agreement.
So
that
the only
was
way we can do that with Firelight and talking about this, their development agreement is done. It's signed, sealed, and delivered. We'd have to require another development agreement just for grading.
It's not, it could be amended and restated. Usually the developer is the one that's coming in and
But we
saying.
would have to say that in this ordinance, that we would have to amend it, right?
No, you'd either say, here's our ordinance that's going to apply uniformly throughout the city, or you say, in this particular instance, we're either going to require a development agreement, or we want to go back as the city and amend and restate. The challenge with amending and restating is there could be a whole host of other issues that one party or the other wants to start negotiating on.
So what number are you looking at, Joey?
I don't have a magical number, but like instead of giving somebody carte blanche to just go move that, like that's,
I think the cost is going
it's
to.
the only way that we could protect the citizens from seeing that all the time.
I know.
And I don't think the development agreement is the proper way, because it's going to take way more expense to the city to go through the development agreement. But like I said, I could get on board with something quite close to this if we could limit the number of pads
that were being built at a time. That would force them, a developer, to build on that pad to move more dirt. So if a developer's planning well enough and doing their job well enough, they're going to move the dirt the next attended place to build, right? They're not just going to move it there because it's the closest pad to do it. They're going to move with intention. And that's the part, what I would like to see the city do.
Well, yes and no. I'm putting on the developer hat when I'm representing other clients. You could say, all right, you can't have more than one. Let's just use the one as an example. Well, you could have your plan be a big enough pad that you're doing your cut and fill and it's all one pad versus having a place where you're getting a permit to pull dirt from, where you're cutting it out and moving it and exporting it somewhere else. So in principle, I'm not objecting to what you're looking at, but in the application, I could see a developer getting crafty enough that they're building one pad, but it's going to have
Well, I think
5
it
or
would-
10
I think it would
different
need to be
elevations
like
and
an
locations.
acreage, and it could even be 10, 20, who knows what the acreage is, no one knows the magical number. But I mean, if somebody only has 5 acres, then, and it was 20, then they can do all 5 acres, right? The whole thing is, because if we have 10 developers come in here and all of them run this, then we could have 30 pads in the city in 2 years, 3 years, right?
So in essence, what I'm hearing is something similar to the PIDs, where it's like, okay, we got enough PIDs moving. We're going to put a cap on PIDs for the city.
Yeah, so that's just my question. Like if we are going to do changes and send it back or not send it back or do something, that's what I would like to see in this ordinance is I would like to see the developers give the ability to use their material as they can, but with the intent to build on the pads and not leave them vacant for so long. And the only way we can do that is by limiting the number of pads or acreage.
And I have a question, and this is I just need clarification on it. But if you're asking for an intent to build or an intent to develop, we have a development agreement in place, right? If we just take one developer, not by name.
I'm talking
We have
about
a
the intent to build
development
on that pad, not just move it.
Right, what I'm saying is, so help me then here, what I'm saying is the intent to build, if I'm a developer, just what Matt was saying, I could see a developer getting like crafty enough, right, to say, oh, this is my development. An MPDO, if I'm a developer, I'm just thinking from a developer standpoint, if I'm a developer, I'm gonna say my intent to build is I submitted an MPDO. I submitted a master plan development overlay zone, and I called out.
Yeah,
my
but this is
specific permitted
1,700 acres. The
Agreed.
intent to build 1,700 acres is how many years?
2035
Yeah,
for the
exactly.
development agreement. And so what I'm saying is just going from a developer standpoint, I could see the developer approaching the city. I'm not saying at all that you know how I am. I like to try to see every single different angle of it, right? I can see a developer approaching the city and saying, we've already expressed our intent to build. We went through an MPDO process. We submitted a master plan development overlay, which has a table of permitted, conditional, and not allowed uses. We called them out by zone. We called them out as commercial planning areas. We called them out as residential. I mean, they're literally labeled in that agreement as PA 12, PA 5, CA1. You can look at their map and see their intent to build. I'm just saying, you're gonna have to find some other way to.
No, what
define
I'm saying
intent
is
to build.
don't move it next door because it's cheaper. Move it to the next
Agreed.
place you're going to build. Like, don't just,
Yeah, I can
that's
see
what I'm
this.
trying to say is plan accordingly and use the dirt accordingly. And yeah, use it, your material, your land, and make it the least amount of impact for the least amount of time. A developer should want to do that anyway, because it's a very costly
It's not gonna-
thing to have that pad sit there that they moved all that dirt on, but it might be making money on the export pad and the receiving pad is just
Yeah.
the blanket, right? So the whole purpose of the time and or the size of the number that we can allow would force them to say, if I can only have 15 acres in pads, right? Then I gotta do something different because I still need to export this number over here. So I'm gonna have to start working, building that land, right? So when they're looking forward in 10 years or 5 years, that's what they need to be looking at, right?
Well, you can look at a couple
It
of
should
different
be
ways.
anyway, but
I mean, again, I've worked on these pads, for the last 15 years of my career. And a lot of them, I'm not associated with one that's had a failure. Like I haven't worked on one that's been an issue. mean, because if you're talking, say you're talking 20, 30 acres, there's a lot of money invested. And so the people who are doing this work, they're not fly by night people if they have the plans. And so they're invested. Like I said, I don't see, I understand what could possibly happen, but I haven't seen it. This is what I'm saying in the work that I've been associated with, again, this is Sitla, or it's been other developers. I haven't seen this some huge issue. And I guess the other point would be, if you heard about pads up there on the bypass road, there aren't any residents up there. No one's seeing that unless you're driving on the road. So it's like, there's no neighbors
Pretty
there,
soon we're gonna be driving that road every day.
but it's not their land.
Oh, I know, but that's what I'm saying. If you want to protect the citizens from seeing it and dealing with the dust and all that for, long-term stuff, that's my
Well,
whole thing.
The dust has mitigation measures.
After 5 years, then what?
It has.
What about 8 years?
Would be reseeded.
Yeah.
And again, Darren can make it be really specific. If he's really worried about a particular spot, he can, really say, hey, I need this landscape plan. I need you to have these berms here. I need you to have some sort of a planning plan with irrigation. It can happen on an individual basis. But I think, again, if someone's really wanted to do this, I think legally it's hard to say, no, you can't because of size.
Yeah, there may be a fundamental principle, yes, can be done, but how, I can't see a way to define that.
Well, that's just my
can be-
question.
Yeah.
It's just a question of how, if it's possible.
I'm with you, Joe. I don't want to see a bunch of big ones, but I think the cost alone will prohibit a lot of these. It's just, the way I see it, they can't just go out and grade a bunch of, and compact it and do drainage and erosion control and water control and all that, and not plan on using it in a really quick future. That's, I don't know how the cost of moving dirt and compacting and all that, just the engineering alone, I think on those pads is going to be a pretty good chunk. And then all that, I'm with you. I don't want to see.
Send me the code from St. George too.
So through another 2006 to 2008, you'll have pads all over and it won't be built on for 10 years. If that happens.
Right.
If that happens,
if
and
they-
you're exposed, then you took your natural beauty and everything away and turned it into pads, which I don't believe the developer would want to do because
Right,
there
the
is
cost.
naturally beauty out
Right,
there.
and
You
the
don't wanna
cost
make it-
of, building those pads.
I could get stuck building and then all of a sudden she flips and
Right.
then we're stuck.
Exactly.
Then we're stuck with mitigation.
But I
and
can see
everything else,
phases 1 through 6 on a subdivision, and they're only going to do 1 and 2 or 3. You know what I mean? There's got to be a way to work with them. And I just don't see. I haven't done a ton of dirt working. I've seen a lot of subdivisions. I just haven't seen a lot of. I've seen the big ones down. I see the ones at Hurricane. They keep expanding there at the Hurricane off ramp there at the freeway, and they keep getting built on. The Washington, the new Parkway. Now there's new buildings getting built on those pads, and those have been there for 5 years now. And there's, so those are out by the freeway. So I know what you're talking about, the pads and stuff. I don't know. I can see the need to help general contractors, but I can see that we don't want big ugly pads. How do we?
And I was just asking them what, I didn't attend planning commission, and so I wasn't there for the public hearing. So I was just asking them if anyone from the public showed up or spoke out against them or for them or anything, and they said nobody showed up.
Same online specialist.
Yeah, we had some.
What?
Doug Towler and the other one that was read today, he submitted online.
Oh, both of the
But
Solara and there's
That was for Jerry Eves.
Oh,
No,
Jerry.
not for tonight. I'm saying the public hearing at,
At
the
planning and
public hearing
zoning.
planning Commission for this ordinance. No, so nobody showed up. I just wondered if the public
Yeah.
had said anything.
So there is some fixes we'd like to, we definitely and Jaron, if you come up with a way to word that for residential stuff, I'm with you. We need to make this, if somebody wants to work on their yard, an existing home, if they're building a new home, then they have their construction drawings, that's different. But an existing residents want to go out and garden or do something, if it doesn't change their drainage on their property, I say you just let them do it. Don't even, that's up to me, that's my opinion.
On residential landscaping, you could take out the word minor grading and just redline that part of that sentence and just say landscaping projects for a single-family resident uses that do not modify the elevation of the existing ground shall be exempt from the permit requirement.
But it doesn't take much to modify the
Doesn't-
elevation. Again,
Well, you could say
I need to
by,
modify my garden, I got to raise it up 2 feet and put a retaining wall, 2-foot retaining wall that's going to be 3,000 square foot. So now I've got to call the city and say, hey, Darren, can I do this? Is that what you guys are saying, is you want all the residents to call and say, Darren, can I do something in my yard? I mean, that just.
I would love to see less permitting by the city, and that's my opinion. I hate when the city's in my backyard.
And there is personal responsibility. If people do something wrong and they do stupid and it costs them more money, I'm sorry. Don't do something stupid.
I'm with you, Gary.
We could remove that line. We could simply remove that line.
Yeah, that adjustment I think would still keep in harmony with what it's trying to do there. I was also looking at that language in exemption B, where we're talking about the applicability is determined by the zoning administrator. I would suggest if that was to be removed, so it doesn't create this fear of, all right, everybody's running and saying hi to Darren and
Yeah,
making
right.
phone calls.
Because what if Darren's sick?
He's a good guy,
What
but
if I
who
get
wants to
sick?
talk to him every day?
Section A, it identifies the zoning administrator as the person that issues the permit. So you could say something along the line. So I'm reading in the second line of section A, just up one paragraph. So it'd say something along the lines of, without having first obtained a permit from the zoning administrator, and then put like a comma, or secured an exemption determination, and ascertaining the existence of the location of underground utilities. So there's something in there, that first sentence, where it's saying, yes, the zoning administrator is issuing the permit, but it also determines the exemption status, what would apply. Does that address your concern that you've been expressing
It's
tonight?
just all about the drainage, you know, if you're gonna change your drainage.
Yeah.
And put it on your neighbor, then.
Oh, yeah,
also known-
that's no good anywhere. I mean, that's.
But it the same as you did agriculture, is you can
Yeah,
basically do what you want on your own property as long as you keep your water on your own property.
And then we
And you
added
follow what the other ordinances, you know,
We have
the
our
hillside, the retaining walls and all of those other things. Those still apply. Just don't put your water on your neighbor's property.
Just curious, what's the cost if someone comes in for a grading permit for their home residency, they're gonna change some stuff? Is there a fee? Is there a fee schedule? Is there
Yeah, they pay
a
an
bond?
application- They pay an application fee, and then if they do get a grading permit, all grading permits are based on cubic yards.
and you need the cost of preparing a minor grading plan and drainage plan consisting of the following.
Okay,
And then you got a list a mile long.
yeah. Is this in here? Does it have to be engineer?
We did with ag.
Engineered grading,
So an engineer on a minor
1,000
grading
cubic yards. Okay.
is only if it's 4
Less
feet in
than.
height or a 2-to-1 ratio. That's the only condition engineered. So if somebody's doing say they hire a company to come in and do landscaping, and here's the plan, they could take that plan that their landscaping company put together for them and
Just bring it to the city.
given a little information, who prepared it, when it was prepared, giving some dimensions, that would be adequate. We're not looking for something that's engineered unless it's really getting to the more complex issues in terms of volume, size.
And I just want to point out too, one thing that staff has done, we did this clear back when Joey was the planning commission chairman. We put in place PSR, which is planning staff review, where people come and they meet with us every Thursday, and they can meet with, Stacy comes to some of them, Darren's there, I go to some of them, just depending on what they are.
Riker.
And it gives people the opportunity, Riker's there, Daisy goes to a lot of them, but it gives people to come in and it gives them the opportunity. If they have something big or something new or something they want to propose to the city, they can come and do that. So, you know what I mean? It's not like we're just right off the bat saying, oh, put in an application and we're gonna charge you a bunch of money. It's like, hey, come on in and talk to us about it. And I don't think we've had a problem with that. I mean,
Yeah.
with planning staff review. I do like the recommendation that Stacy made to just change the residential to match the ag on that, to keep your water
Yeah.
on
So
your own property.
and in your packets, there is a recommendations. One of the documents is the recommendation changes from the planning commission. You can see the what we did there is basically we modify the elevation of the existing ground to negatively adjacent property in regards to drainage. So those are there as well, the top ones. So, and we changed a bunch of things like this clerical or designee and a few things like that. But that was what Stacy is talking about there, is we could throw that into that same residential clause and possibly remove whatever you're talking about there with what Attorney Ekins is suggesting. I think that would solve that, I think.
Can we change it the way, when we fix it and approve it, or
Can we fix it, approve it, or we've still got the issue with
how do we,
The-
how do we
the
limit,
limits on
how do we
the-
limit?
the developer issues? So are they resolved tonight for a vote or not?
Not in my mind.
Or do they need
No,
to be?
nobody ever come up with any
Okay. and
acreages
so-
or anything.
You guys agree with it?
So if those aren't resolved yet, then we'll take the time to do both at the same time and table it till the next meeting. If your guys are, got a resolution on the development.
Do you have an idea that we can?
Well, I've asked the questions.
I know.
But there's not like, it's going to be a legal path forward. My question is obviously going to be a legal path forward if it's got too many loopholes or not. And if it actually has any bearing teeth to make it applicable for somebody to follow.
So, I mean, I'd be happy if I just took out, just leave the word "be" exemptions and the rest of that sentence goes. And I think,
You're happy with everything else in
and
the
I think,
ordinance?
I think the citizen's going to look at these exemptions and say, do I qualify or do I not qualify? And if I don't qualify, then I go to Darren.
So that
Because right
takes care
now,
of, that takes care of the or the
the
residential.
residential, if I just took that out.
So
Would you
what do
agree
we,
with that?
what do we do about big developers?
Engineering pads. Stuff like that.
The ag
Yeah.
basically match
Yeah.
that with. So what do we do with the big stuff? We're talking, the residential stuff, great, let's protect our residents, but what about, 1,000-acre developer or whatever? How do we manage that so we don't have 1,000 acres of giant empty land pads made? So, I know it wasn't, I just had to throw it out.
2,000 acres.
2,000 acres, they only want 1,000. They got on their neighbor's land and made their water run.
I'm telling you, if we could find a way, in my mind, if we could find a way to limit the amount of pads that could be built by an individual or developer at a time, then I would really be happy with this, but.
Okay, what's your number? How do we?
I don't know. what
Just
the number
curious.
but-
Is it a percentage?
So
Is it a-
before we come up with a number, is it actual viable to do is my question. Is there a way that we could put something in there?
Yeah, this is the legislative process, as long as it's not arbitrary, capricious, that there's a purpose for it, and you spell it out, yeah, the ordinance can be in there. As I've looked at other jurisdictions all the way from Logan to Park City to southern Utah, not every municipality has a specific grading ordinance, and of those that do have a grading ordinance that I've looked at, none of them have a restriction in terms of acreage or pads. This would be a unique component to this. So, in terms of looking at examples, no, I don't have any examples I can point to and say, this is how Tokerville could look at doing it.
Does everybody else agree that we should do that? Or is everybody else okay with the way it is?
We can always be the exception.
Not a motion.
We don't have to.
That's
be
a
everybody
discussion
else.
topic,
That's a
right?
discussion. Hey, you can ask for votes. I can,
Does anybody else
absolutely.
want to limit the size is basically the question I'm asking. Does anybody else want to limit the number of pads that can be built into?
I want to limit the number of pads.
You do?
500 acres, 50 acres, 100 acres.
Well, 500 acres is huge.
Arbitrary, capricious.
Huge, that's huge.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, you've got to have a purpose behind it.
The purpose is to not have a bunch of empty pads. And is that a good enough purpose? Eyesore, future,
Aesthetics.
yeah.
Mitigation.
Health, safety, welfare, dust blowing on our residents, right?
Air quality monitor.
That's all we need.
Yeah, but you've got,
Well, 35 years.
you've got provisions in there in terms
do.
of mitigating the dust, the drainage, the water, monitoring the air quality. So to say the size, to to me, that doesn't consist, or it's not consistent with the
size
provision of the
won't
new.
fly.
Why don't we just
The
make
number.
why don't we just take
size
the
or number.
5 years or the, you can do the 5 years to build it, but why don't we keep all them in place until it is developed? Keep all the
Keep all
dust
the,
mitigation and air quality and all that in place until the develop's done.
So essentially it would be a pad maintenance type ordinance.
Until it's been built on, yeah, until it's completely developed. That makes it easy.
I mean, that'd be something similar to your nuisance. I haven't looked at the nuisance laws.
Yeah, there's permanent measures in there.
Where?
They're
Scroll down, let's look at that.
On the, it's down to the number, down to the bottom and
go down. Look at the permanent measures. We talked about.
under dust control.
Exceeded.
Cleared.
I just want to point out
Tumbleweeds.
too that, if everybody remembers back to where we started originally, I know when I got to.
There was no such thing.
Amount of property for $25.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way. To now we're worried about the dust and drainage and all sorts of things, so
Well, you got
we're
the-
doing great.
The aesthetic value to look at and the maintenance, the dust, the problem with it.
Sure, and then you get into, like he's saying, defining aesthetic, you know what I mean? Some people don't like what their neighbors are doing, don't like the kind of car they drive, or think they have too much junk on their driveway.
If you put specific things in there for maintenance of that pad, so it hurts a little bit, they're gonna be more inclined not to do it or build on it.
Exactly why, like if you keep the dust mitigation and the quality control and fugitive air control in place until it's
If that's
developed.
already
Because
in
it
place.
says in here, you gotta have
1018.
quality control
That's up to
device.
5 years.
Darren, which one is
And
it?
18B11.
18B11.
So even
Let's
if
look
you
at that.
reseed it and it's sanded,
Yeah.
you would still do it. What is it?
18B11.
That's the annual review and expiration, if there's something there.
No, we were talking about specific measures in place. Remember, you had to have
That
like.
goes
Annual review expression approved agreement.
Yeah, I can't find it.
Oh, yes, that's.
It's in blue.
Oh, yeah, it's further up, Jason.
Oh,
I've been
Talks
looking.
about the permanent.
Says they gotta have a dust monitoring device in place.
Yep,
That's
Correct,
just
that's
during
a-
construction.
that's for up to.
Is that only during
Up to 5
construction?
years, as long as they're not,
5
until
years.
they're topped out. Like, if they top out in 2 years, they're done, right?
Right.
So is there interest in something like what Scott mentioned tonight, where the St. George City has an annual inspection, but that's specifically to more of water, drainage, water, making sure culverts are cleaned out. But is the interest in, like, we want to have a maintenance ordinance that'll essentially, the city's going to be supervising and watching that, yes, we had a plan in place, but is the property maintaining to that standard that was in the plan? If not, is there something that the city can come back and say, all right, even though it's been approved and done, the condition of the property is not consistent with what the design was intended. You need to come back and fix it, address it. Maybe it's, I don't know, weeds you put in like one of those sterilization products. You can go in and make sure all the weeds are dead, or sterilize the property. That kind of maintenance ordinance could come in, whether it's a separate ordinance under the nuisance or a component as part of the grading. Those are two options you could look at with a maintenance component. And that's, in my mind, that's clearly within the health, safety, and welfare of the city.
So that would be a separate ordinance?
You could put it as a separate.
Could, it could be under
Or
your
we could-
nuisance, weeds growing or water that's coming off. That could be a nuisance type ordinance where you expand that out and say, all right, let's look at this idea of having empty pads. How do we want to manage potential nuisances? Because the residents can come in saying, I've got sand blowing in my yard, or I've got weeds coming in, whatever that might be. So you manage under a nuisance, not necessarily grading ordinance. Or you can say specifically, if you got a grading permit that's approved, not only do you have to get the permit completed, but you're going to be under a maintenance obligation until it's no longer a graded pad. You pull your permit or whatever.
You like
It's a lot
that?
better than.
Than the nuisance.
Until it's going to be maintained, continually maintained and monitored
Until it's built on.
until it's not more engineered. bad.
Until there's some improvements.
Until they actually build. That would solve a lot of problems, because that could be not a large cost, but it is a cost for someone to make sure that sand
Yeah.
environment
Yeah.
stays where it is. And they may even have to go in and brush it, right? Which is going to cause more dust. Could be another problem, right?
Yeah.
that with all our.
Yeah, it says, I know, but that's what I'm saying. So when you go brush it, sometimes you're creating as much dust, fugitive dust, and, depending on what you're using.
If you want to
We
tell,
water and roll and put some crust on, or you had no dust on.
then you used to have something.
We've done the same thing out here.
But we're looking at-
I've seen no dust. You should go out on a windy day and go look at our site.
Blow sand
It's amazing.
out here?
But
Yeah.
That's got a little.
How long does the crust
so the
last
limit thing.
if it was
You're
undisturbed?
not worried about that.
Crust.
If you make
You
them
gotta do one
maintain
of the
it.
two. If someone's going to.
Let me, so
Okay, so if we
But
did a
also then you're
separate
still
ordinance,
stuck with, you're still stuck with the ability to build a lot of pads.
So if you did a maintenance.
It's more money.
ordinance Separate for like stormwater and you did weed control, weed abatement, that would be something that we.
so,
Well, that,
Put calcium well and all that.
Sometimes it could be a mineral,
So-
sometimes it could be reseed.
and if you go to 10 dash 18B2, item 2, XIII, I don't know what Roman numeral that is, but
That's 13.
little I, 10 III, that's 13, 1013. It's a permanent, we talk about the SWIP preparation of stormwater, and then we also have a permanent erosion control plan addressing the final conditions of the site. And that's an engineered drawing that has to be submitted with the permit. So that's what we had talked about as far as, those types of things.
One other thing in addition to that is if you're familiar with the SWIP document, that's typically that's required for this project as well. Yeah, there is permanent, what's the word? Sorry, it's been a long day. Yeah, there's permanent BMPs, there's permanent measures that are in place that are part of the SWIP plan. And so that would be enforceable as well too, unless there's an NOT or no notice of termination. So in this case, the NOT can't be done until something is built out there. So you could leave that NOT out for 10 years. You know what I'm talking about, Wayne? When you do an NOI for you're doing a SWIP plan, basically, normally, say if you're out there working, you would do the NOT when you're done working, you move off the site and you're done. In this case, with the SWIP, you don't file the NOT until something else is out there. So that would require the contractor. Let's say if it's you, sorry, you're going to be out there for 10 years having to deal with it. So put that in your price, or the developer will just pay you, once in a while. But that'll give some teeth to making somebody clean it up and make them take care of it.
And that's federal oversight.
Right. So that is there.
So
You're
it's
saying
still,
just
still
don't,
just the limiting.
they can't get their NOT till it's built on.
Yeah. And now it might change from the contractor to the developer who changes the ownership of the SWIP, because the contractors come and go. But yeah, I've seen it happen before often, actually. But, in the 1 to 2 year range where someone's come back on a SWIP and said, hey, we're having this problem. You need to go fix it. And then the contractor gets mad because they're trying to go fix it. They're on the hook still. So, yeah, so that's the way to look at it.
Buffalo doesn't have to qualify for SWIP, or we don't do SWIP.
No, anything over an acre, it's
Obviously, we're not doing it.
and it's a requirement, it's a requirement in here, SWIP prepared by a stormwater inspector certified in the state.
so on one of these, we'd have to have that.
And they would have to have it always until something's built.
And that comes back to enforcement.
And this is the legal component in my mind. There's probably engineering a better way to approach it, but a permanent erosion control plan and have another section within this ordinance that specifically talks about maintenance or enforceability of that erosion plan. And maybe it starts off with, okay, you've got to maintain a crust for every month or 6 months. And if it goes beyond 2 years and you haven't built on it, then you've got to automatically reseed. And during this entire time, there's got to be oversight, maintenance, or air monitors. So it's easy to say with the air monitor there on the site, if there's a dust event, your monitor is going to know that. Objectively, you can say, okay, we need to go back and
Put them on the south side of the pads.
well, yeah, wherever the downwind's going to
Well,
be.
that's all part of that, the permanent, erosion control plan,
So that could be all part of the plan, or if you want to be more specific, saying this is what we want to see. I'd like to give more deference to the people that are designing, putting it together. But if the city has concerns about getting it enforced, all right, let's have something that specifically talks to, enforcement. Now, we do have language that's just overall enforcement of the entire provision, but if the city council feels it's important enough, maybe we have some specific language on enforceability of that permanent control plan, what they can go back and
That's
work on.
usually done in a policy or by a checklist, in case that erosion control plan
Yeah, and it doesn't
needs
necessarily
to
have to.
change according to state code and become stricter.
Yeah, a city policy is a lot easier to adapt
Policy,
to,
not an ordinance.
not an ordinance that's requiring this body to maintain that.
So do you reference a city policy that will be developed and then
Well,
reference it
just
within the
that,
ordinance?
that permanent erosion control plan, that would be a policy. It'll be in this ordinance,
And so,
but the requirements on that would become policy.
okay.
So we could write up a permanent erosion control plan as a policy that's an addendum
Yeah,
to
policy,
this.
city erosion
Right.
control plan.
Yeah, and it is part of this ordinance.
Yeah.
Would that be enough to like,
Yeah.
We could make a policy saying you have to have, air quality control or monitors, you have to keep, we could list it in a policy and just tie it to here. Then if we miss something on the policy, we could change it without coming back and changing the ordinance.
Or have a review of that policy. every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What else we got? So is that something we could, without major modifications here? I mean, that's since it's already in here.
Yeah, you're not changing that.
Yeah,
already in the ordinance.
Yeah, you're not doing that. You're just giving direction to staff to create
a policy
And the only other thing that's changing is
is the exemptions.
we're
Right.
removing that line.
Okay.
Yeah, with the red line changes are pulling out, that's clearly within
Within,
what we can do tonight.
okay.
Giving more definition to the control plan via policy. Again, it could be approved tonight.
What about the planning commission recommendations?
They're-
Do we make them part of the motion?
Yeah, you can incorporate those.
But changing the residential too.
Yes, to match the agriculture, yeah. Yep.
How,
do
what's
we need
it,
to reference that policy in here?
We can motion to, maybe we can say, we state in the motion that we make a policy to mitigate the,
You
what
would
was
just
it
say
again?
give
Permanent erosion
direction to
plan.
staff to create an erosion
Policy.
Policy, yep. Permanent erosion control plan.
Because
Joey, make that in motion quick, it's in your head.
It's not in the ordinance.
It's not, there is,
Still not that-
there, but we
still
got,
not
But it's not defined.
it's not, yeah, it's there, but it's not defined as we would like
And
to
then-
define it.
Can you restate the exemption B again, Gary, what you wanted, or Matt, how it's gonna look,
Yes.
please?
Well,
Matt or
I'm
Gary?
just recommending that we take out, just put exemptions and then redline the sentence following exemptions. The applicability of any of the above listed exemptions must be determined by the zoning administration. I just want to take that out. We're defining it there, and if people
Just get rid
aren't
of that.
following the definition, then.
Okay, so then
they need to-
exemptions, and then it would just go down 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, make two,
And it didn't require any,
You
We,
don't have to specify.
I've already done that.
Yeah.
in the staff changes, yeah. And then change number 2 to mimic number 1, basically, on residential landscaping, make it match more of the agriculture, where if you're not changing your grading, your water, basically, then you could,
Yeah, instead of saying that do not modify the elevation of the existing ground, you would say that does not negatively impact adjacent property in regards to drainage.
yeah. And I think you put that also in yours, Darren, something like that, in the change.
We need to be typing that up so we can see it before you approve it.
Well, we can say it in the motion, and then it has to be changed before I sign it into ordinance.
You remember what you said?
Negative impact on Jason.
It's on YouTube.
It always seems to be a little different every
So-
time here.
Just so you know that when we do these, we go back and watch YouTube. If you see where we think we're watching TV on our computers, we're not. We're watching city council meetings.
right.
SpongeBob always shows up.
So everybody still thinks that policy will clean up the number of pads. You think we
I-
can
We
put
haven't
enough
dealt
teeth
with
in
the limit.
policy?
Well, I think
We can-
with all the stuff we're going to make them do, that's going to limit the amount of red tape and amount of things that they have to do to maintain these pads. And I don't know. It's a lot of money to build these pads and then to have to go ahead and maintain them in perpetuity until they're built on. Then I think that's going to help limit a lot of them. Because I don't know how you put a number to it. I don't know how you limit, I don't know how to do that. And I guess there's not another from Logan to Bloomington, there's not one in between.
Not that I found, but I haven't checked every city. I could be wrong. My sampling size is small.
At least we're not, the tumbleweeds here weren't nothing like Eagle Point, so.
So
That was bad.
Why are they bad? They got mass
Oh,
grading
man.
crazy there.
Wow, they're on the other side of the lake. so-
That's why they're bad there.
That's exactly
It's
what.
exactly right.
You gotta look at,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's 500 acres of mass graded land. That's why the tumbleweeds did what they did.
So the residential landscaping exemption is going to read something to the effect of
The ag.
grading, excavation,
5-year thing.
filling or clearing for landscape projects for single-family residential users that do not modify the elevation of this existing ground shall be exempt from a grading permit.
Correct.
Did I say that right?
Mhm.
Okay.
We're not
Yeah.
changing it at all.
Well, yeah, we are. We're taking
Gonna
out,
say that, no, we're gonna say what the attorney said, which is that it does not negatively impact, right, the neighbor.
Yeah, it'll be the same thing that the planning commission had put in their
Yeah,
ordinance
so we
change.
would read residential landscaping. Landscaping projects for single-family residential uses that do not negatively impact adjacent property in regards to drainage.
Here in this.
you're looking. at
Shall be
that.
exempt from a,
Right there.
Yeah, exact same words there we'll put into that same
Okay, I was looking at-
paragraph.
I was looking at the actual ordinance.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Where I was.
So as the mayor said, we mimic number 2 to number 1 with the changes from the planning commission.
Okay, I got you.
So if there's, okay. Are you looking for a motion?
I'm looking for a way home.
I checked this too.
Yeah, I'm willing to listen to a
I think
motion.
At the minimum, if we're gonna put a policy in place, this should reference the policy.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we can
Yeah.
include that in the motion.
Yeah.
Should be
I-
in here. And I would actually like to see the policy first, before. So, yeah.
Well, we can-
Who's in charge of approving the policy?
We are. They can write it and then bring it to us and we can
Yeah.
approve it. And we can just say, no, change this, and we can make that policy how we want it.
It
Yeah,
will
you've
be
got
a
long
living
time to get the
document.
policy.
It'll be a living document. It can't be
Okay.
changed. The
You've got a
policy
long-
can be
you've
changed.
got a long time to get the policy.
But I'd like to get it done ASAP because we've probably got some people that want
Yeah,
some
I'm just
grading
saying, we
permits.
should, it'd be back before, yeah.
We'll draft it.
And put it together
And have it in 2 weeks.
and have you
Yeah.
guys.
Part of the motion should say that no grading permits shall be approved until the policy is complete.
Yes.
Comes at the end of the,
Ordinance.
doesn't the policy come at the end of the grading? That's when you're doing the
That-
expanding of the finished thing, the finished project.
Yeah,
I also
but they
wanna say-
need to know the terms of that before they start working.
What you're talking about is entering a moratorium though. And so to enter a moratorium, you have to have,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you have to have
No,
something before.
it's not,
you
it's
write
not a
it.
moratorium on
That's not what it
applications.
is.
It's not a moratorium. It's just that none can be approved until the policy is complete. It's not saying you can't apply for it. You can't do anything with it. You
A
can't. make it-
moratorium is not issuing them. Like when we
Yeah.
had to feed people with the FEMA, so that's what I'm saying, that's a moratorium, so you need to go through legal, you have to
Yeah.
actually put that into that, you have to put it on an agenda, you have to go into a moratorium. All I'm saying is entering a moratorium is a big deal, and you have to have a big reason why. We did it with FEMA, with the floodplain, we had people building in the floodplain and the floodway, had that from We had to put a flood control ordinance in place. So I'm just saying, yeah, entering a moratorium. All I'm saying is, if you want to enter a moratorium, you have to put that on an agenda. You've got to have it drafted, clear legal, and come back before you for an actual vote to enter a moratorium. It's not a condition of the motion, is all I'm saying.
Well, then I suggest we
Leave it
table
there.
it until we can see the,
That's
You suggest what?
no, we would table it until we can get to the
Policy.
policy.
We can't, yeah, we can't trust the staff to come up with a adequate policy.
Well, yes, we can. I don't care. That's not the point is,
Yeah.
the point is that the developer doesn't do something or a developer doesn't do something before. The point- That's my point. It's nothing to do with staff.
One point is, if they're gonna, if someone's gonna do some engineering grading, they gotta come up with some construction plans, and that's gonna take me a month, and then he's gotta look at it. So you've got a month or two before anyone's gonna be approved, because it has to have all these elements done.
Yeah, we do need to create policy for application, or something to that effect. But now I spoke with Matt about that once too, of creating a policy for the application.
Yeah, and to address this, you could also, with the erosion control plan provision, you could add some language that
1 year we
would
terminate.
state that control plan
That you're gonna have to terminate.
is maintained by or established by policy. So our ordinance is reflecting there is a policy. So as the application is going through, it's very clear that you just can't have a plan in place, but there's going to be a policy for maintenance of that. So that could be some language added to the current draft, but you'd reference expressly that the policy is there. But practically speaking, I think you're months out before you're going to see your first application come in.
From Canada.
So yeah, under that section I, you could add some language about referencing the policy in there. So it's clear, not just in the motion, but in the ordinance.
Solid or they?
You want to go right there to
XI? Yeah, we can add to it really
property?
quick.
Hold on a second, we can't. Okay, go ahead.
So Matt's we want to go ahead and write some language to one of these numbers here about the policy, just a brief sentence.
So at the end of XI, yeah, where it's talking about the erosion control plan.
It's triple I days.
Well, there's a XI, then there's permanent erosion.
Permanent.
Oh, excuse me, 13. Yes, 13.
Yeah, XII. Aye,
Thank
there you go.
A permanent one.
And what about the policy, were you thinking that?
So at the end, I would say to be defined by city policy.
Or in accordance with city policy?
Or in accordance with city policy.
Yeah, typically we say like a permanent erosion control plan addressing the final conditions of the site, and then it just literally says in accordance with the current policy.
Yep, in accordance with the current city policy. That policy can change, but it's tying the fact that the plan has to be tied to the policy. So we're very clear on this point, not just a motion tonight, but anybody can look at that ordinance knowing plan, there's going to be a policy that'll be ongoing over time.
So if there's one problem one time, he can change the policy the next day, goes to city council, the rules changes that.
Yeah.
So there's your.
It's much easier than changing the ordinance.
Right.
Or according to the maintenance policy, or if you want to be more specific, you're really looking at maintaining that control plan. Just a suggestion.
No, that's good. That's
18, what is that, 18B what?
13.
XII.
18B.
Might not be taken in the It's not here, it's in here, you gotta go to the regular
this one.
ordinance.
The one Daisy ends up.
Oh, it's in the regular
Yeah.
ordinance? All right. Right, we're referencing the regular.
Yeah, on
ordinance,
that, that's in there. It's up there on the, yeah. The little X and the three little I's. Is that, how are you guys on that end looking? Do you like the policy? We'll make a policy before they ever issue a grading permit. We can get Darren to work on that for the next 2 weeks. We can hit it next.
Riker and myself, yes.
Yeah, well, whoever. Staff, not Darren exactly. Just make sure it's done. That's all I'm saying. When I say you, Darren, I mean, you just make sure it gets done.
Yes, we will.
So, what do you think? What else? We've got the ag and the residential figured out. We've got a policy we're going to install to permanently to have people
I
maintain
want to
these
say one
permanently.
thing before
Yes.
someone makes a motion, because this city, 3 years ago, when I was in planning commission, was adamantly against mass grading or engineered pads at all. And we went through this city to make sure that this didn't happen, right? It hasn't changed that much, and I do, and I want to say that I understand the concerns of developers. And every time someone just keeps complaining, we keep changing and changing and changing, right? You guys agree?
Yep.
So I think we should be really careful on proceeding this, because it's going to open up a new door. So that's what I want to say. We worked a long time to put a lot of good things in place. And this ordinance was supposed to go for a change from 125 to 10%, and it came to this, right? So what changed in that time? Did the city council instruct? What happened? Because we went to a massive change. I want everybody to be aware of that. That's all I'm going to say.
But Joey, I think you acknowledged that you kind of initiated doing more than. the
I
10%.
initiated looking into the ability to restrict the number, if we could restrict the number, period. And that was the end of discussion.
We haven't been able to do that,
I
but
said-
we've tried to find a way to.
So I said, look into it. I didn't say change the ordinance. I said, let's look into the possibility of doing it. That's all and that was just a conversation I had with Stacy only. And maybe Darren. Wasn't a conversation I had anybody here. I said, let's just look into it. I didn't instruct anybody. I didn't do anything.
So no pads at all? I mean, that's what we're.
No, I just
know. I'm
want-
just trying to figure out how we make this doable for developers and citizens.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, everybody's trying to keep the cost of houses down. If we, don't let them do a little bit of this, I don't want to see, I'm with you. I don't want to see the whole thing graded off and flattened out and.
Well, like I kind of hear Wayne, we've been down this road so many times. We've seen this grading ordinance or a type of this grading ordinance 4 times in the last 3 years, 2 years, right? So why do we just keep beating this thing up and just allowing more and more and more? That's what I want to
Because
know.
we're growing.
Yeah.
We are
We're
growing, yeah.
We're learning
But-
a lot of things. Those dust monitors were not in the last one. There are a lot of safeguards that have been put in this one that were not in the others.
Yeah, the other one didn't need safeguards because it didn't allow it.
It was tight.
But they don't do it anyway. We didn't have enforcement. We didn't have a lot of things.
Well, if they were doing it anyway, they were violating code, right?
That's what I'm saying, but we didn't have, you know what I mean, enforcement of that.
So my question is, what does that do to economic growth if we?
I agree. We got to
if
look
we
at all
add,
sides, but that's.
You know, the other
I
side
said
of
my
it,
piece and whatever it is, but.
yeah, we've got to look at, are the citizens of Tocqueville just wanting a road there? Or are they wanting us to start building homes out there? And it'll help with property taxes. It'll help bring in commercial business into town. So I'm looking at this from an economic situation when we have new development with a private landowner that has rights to want to develop their land as best they can. So I agree with you, but we're now faced with what are the consequences of stifling a developer, and what are those costs going to be to future investors?
Are we
into-
stifling or are
I don't
we going back to our normal code?
I don't think we're stifling. We're just saying they come in and get their permit. They grade it, they build the houses on it. But they're not going to be grading 3 or 4 of them. What's your plan? Okay, we're going to put in a store, a shopping center and a school and all this, and we're going to put in 200 houses. That's what they're grading. That's all they're grading. They get that completed or another pad, but not this continually pad thing. Because we want them to grade, but we don't want them to grade so much that they can't afford to build or vice versa.
Right, and I think
They
that's
need
where
to
there's a
build
lot
on
of
what
these,
they grade, but
there's a lot of
at a
these
certain
safeguards in
time, I think,
here.
in a certain time, and that'll ensure your economic development right there. But it won't be scattered all over sparsely and, well, we won't do this one and just, That's my fear is they're not going to complete it. And we have a
Right.
path
So-
started and
so
we
the
can terminate it
discussions
in a
that
year
we-
if they don't do it.
The
but we still have a
discussions that
path.
we've had to build a policy and have other items in there to where we're trying to control it and make sure it's manageable.
Yeah,
We've
I
talked
agree with
about
too.
that.
If we don't
We've
have a
talked
policy,
about
we got to
that.
develop that first and then we
Right.
got to be comfortable with that policy.
Okay,
I
so,
think-
but is that something that's acceptable to what I see the opposition is right now?
Well,
Did
you
we-
could put a
did we
policy
reach-
in there
did
on
we
the
reach
number
an-
amount of pads you're going to allow per developer. You can have that in your
And I
policy.
agree with that, but I understand it's that we can't do that. Okay, and if
Sure
we
we can do
can't,
that.
well, then let's pick a number to put a limit down.
Because you're going to have how many multiple developers out there when Westbrook starts selling? and-
Well, per acre.
Westbrook has an agreement with one developer to buy every piece of land. So there will be
Every piece?
one developer has all 1,700 acres from Westbrook. So we only have one development agreement on that whole 1,750 acres.
Do we have anything in it? We don't have a development agreement on that yet, do we?
Yes, oh, we've had it for years.
Yeah.
So you can't control the grading on his without
We're getting
some kind of,
off topic, getting into
Yeah.
specifics of development.
Right,
This
exactly.
is about the grading.
does it say anything about grading in there or anything like that? Or we forgot about that on that developer agreement? It was just
They
lost.
submitted a master plan development.
So you got to have some policy here in place for that specific 1,700 acres. And we don't
We
have. that
have, we have a,
policy.
we have a
That's not
development
conversation,
agreement.
it's ordinance.
Right,
That's
this is
that's-
ordinance.
This is a city ordinance that applies to the entire city. You cannot
Right.
target one developer saying, oh, I'm afraid of this developer, I'm afraid of that developer, or did we do that? Those are, you know what I mean?
No, we're
What I'm
not
is
saying that. I'm just
even-
saying,
So what's?
before
what
they
we
can
have
start
to take
developing, you
into
got to have a
account-
policy.
Yes,
They did, so there is a development.
there is a
agreement
development
Yes.
agreement
In
in
that,
place.
but so
and-
when.
But it doesn't
what
tell
they're
them how
saying
many, it doesn't say
is-
anything
the-
about
the
how
only
many
way we
pads.
can do it is. in
Is
this
through
ordinance.
ordinance. This is why we're trying to pass this ordinance.
That's why I said what I said and got off my chest what I wanted to say. And I think Matt's over there, he's saying, man, I don't know if I should have put that RFP in now because he's. Sorry.
I just want to point out that, yes, this ordinance has been seen 3-4 times, but what we also have to understand is that when we see problems, our city is growing. When we see problems that need to be mitigated, and it doesn't mean, oh, we just want to see growth come in here and do that. There are a lot of things that when these ordinances come back through, they have protective measures for the residents in place.
Yep.
So just because an ordinance comes through here and an ordinance gets changed, that does not mean it's being changed specifically in favor of developers. We change ordinances for all sorts of reasons. State code, maybe it is expressed desires, maybe it is public hearings, but for all sorts of reasons, ordinances get changed. So we can't have a perception that every time an ordinance is in front, that it's, you know what I mean? There's a lot of protective measures that go into place protecting the residents from things. So it's, you'll always, if we quit modifying ordinances, we'll no longer have city council.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's the job of city council, is to, an ordinance is the law of the city. It's the job of city council to look at them, evaluate them, and see if they are fair for all, not a select few.
I think with our procedure, our policy on the permanent erosion control plan, we can make this to where they're not going to want a ton of them. They're going to do limited number. I think we can put a policy there that will help mitigate that. If they've got to keep for perpetuity, keep air quality control, keep the weeds down, keep all this stuff down, then they're not going to want to build a bunch of them. We just got to put that in policy.
Well,
So,
yeah, and not only that, but I mean, if you look at all the standards of review, that hits
oh
a
yeah,
lot of.
it does. Every year they go review it. Every year they do.
Yeah, but I mean, it hits a lot of all a lot of areas of concern
Right.
for our residents. And then with Wayne's comment and Joey's with the fact that, the way it is right now, a developer has to come in and grade for a specific area and then build. That's, there still isn't safeguards if that developer starts it and
doesn't finish it.
Doesn't finish it or go bankrupt or whatever. There are safeguards here. I mean,
Safeguards, he doesn't have 20 pads. He has one.
Yeah, but it's still gonna end up the same,
No, you take the bond and you reclaim that one pad.
which is what we're doing here with the
There's a bond
bond,
for
with
each
the,
one of
which is the bond right now. If they come in and want to do 20 pads, the bond increases for the amount of pads they want to
Every
use,
pad
correct?
has
Well,
bond.
So it's going to be put back in some state, whether it's 1 or 10 pads that go, if a developer goes bankrupt,
Yeah.
those pads are going to be restored to somewhat of a character of how they were before by the bond. Am I saying that correctly? Okay, so, I mean, there is that safeguard.
You
Some
had
kind of
something?
money, only 10% of whatever it is.
Well, can we increase the bond then? I mean, we talked about increasing the bond.
I mean, $1 million, you get 100,000 on it, and they could probably burn up $1 million on a 50-acre piece, easy. So $1 million is a pretty good hefty bond.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
I think Gary's ready to make a motion.
Gary or Chuck, one of them. Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay, we've, in my opinion, we beat this horse to death for over an hour or so. And it's my opinion and my motion that we remand this whole thing back to the staff and to the planning commission to look over all this hour of YouTube and pick out all the suggestions and information and changes we've made and put it all into one document and then have it come back to us in a usable format that we can see at least a week before we bring it back on the ballot here or on our agenda to look at, so that the next time we bring it up, that we can have it ready to go for a vote. Because I agree with everybody who's talked, we've come and gone, over and over and over again, changed it for this, changed that. Afton's right, we're probably gonna have to change it again as we grow, but right now, we need to move on. And so that's my motion. We table this and move it over to the planning commission and to the staff to fix it up so we've got a usable document when we come back. Yeah, somebody wants to second that? Fine, go ahead.
May I? So following this through, you guys are only making 2 changes. You're changing XII to add current policy, and we're changing residential to match the agriculture. Other than that, the rest of the document is staying as it was suggested by planning commission.
Okay.
So there really is not much there.
Okay. I do have a motion on the floor. So I need a second.
Or he could amend,
Yeah.
or he could amend his motion.
A motion stands to table?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion that I need a second.
That's for lack of a
Okay.
second.
Well, are we gonna get,
So
are
that's,
we gonna get some vehicle in there that controls the number of pads?
so
That would
that's,
solve that problem. We've got 2 minor things, but we
According
haven't
to
solved the
legal
problem.
counsel right here, right now, this is what we're saying. This ordinance has been through it, and we have spent tons of time and tons of money. And from the planning commission chairman, what he's saying is, if you're sending this back to the planning commission, if you want to table it and allow us to make those changes and bring it back to you.
it's still not going to come back with any
But-
limiting
but
number of
the thing-
pads.
Right.
You're only recommending 2
You're
changes.
recommending 2 changes. So I guess the clarification is, are you asking to table it, but not send it to planning?
What size
Just
of pads?
table it at this level, have us make the changes and bring it to you in 2 weeks?
Well, we could, that's, or we could make a motion.
You'll have to amend the motion to
We
table.
already recommended it.
Or can
So-
you, or is that legal?
Okay. I like it.
So we just, yeah, so,
We've got a
well,
motion.
we have nobody seconded it.
So he wanted to amend his
So-
motion.
Okay, do you want to amend it
Amend it
now?
to just what she just said. Well, I mean, it was like a block.
You're gonna have to repeat that. You're gonna have to repeat.
He wants to table it and have us come back.
Back to you at the next meeting.
In 2 weeks, so it's not going back to the
Because they're
planning
not
commission.
substantial changes to send it all.
But if that's all we're going to change, we could make a motion to change it tonight and approve it.
Make a motion to change.
I mean-
I don't care. We've been doing it for an
Okay,
hour and a half.
if you'll rescind it, I'll make the motion, Chuck.
Take it back.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we approve business item 8 with the changes XII, right?
Yep.
No, yes, XII, that.
One more I. It's 13.
Roman numeral 13,
Yeah.
that we add to a permanent erosion control plan addressing the final conditions of the site, that we instruct city to come up with a policy for that.
In accordance to the current maintenance policy.
In accordance to the current maintenance policy. And then that we also change under exemption B, number 2, that we change the residential landscape to mirror the agricultural number 1. Do I need to read it? I'll be happy to.
I think that's good.
Okay. And then also that we include all the recommended change ordinances that the planning commission proposed, recommended.
And eliminate the sentence after exemptions.
Okay, and eliminate
The applicability.
exemption B, strike the sentence, the applicability of any of the below listed exemptions must be determined by the zoning administrator.
Second.
Got it. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
You want a limit in it? Wayne? You want a limit in it?
I do, but I don't know if the lawyer decided we could do that or not. I just still think,
There's a possibility, but there's a practicability. What's practical to do that? How do we make that happen? So yes, an ordinance could put a limit on there. It's just, how do you do that applies equally and fairly
I
to
don't know.
everybody?
If we
And I don't
find a
have
way
that
to do
answer.
that, can we include that in the policy?
Or can we amend?
Policy not.
Amend the ordinance? and
Yeah, you can
come
always,
on,
you can always bring the ordinance back up and say, we want to add
Just add
this
this.
limit
Yeah.
and take
I
what you have
guarantee
tonight
you
and,
This is coming up.
and revision 6 or 7, that's always a possibility.
If it's coming up, then I'd rather not do it at the time.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and we've had discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
nay.
Nay.
Got 3-2.
Passes. Rods.
Let's go.
Okay, we are done for the evening. We have no need for closed session. Perfect. All right, we adjourn this meeting at 8:54. Cow, write him a check.